welcome to the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the National Trail System Act. My name is Jennifer Farr Davis, and I'll be your host. I'm also a completer of the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. And both paths were such a gift to me personally. But in 1968, our entire country was given the gift of these trails. And not only do they provide amazing outdoor recreation opportunities, but these paths also create a corridor for conservation. And they foster an appreciation of nature and American history, and also our cultural diversity. Now today, October 2nd, marks the 50th anniversary of the National Trail System Act. And with that came the designation of our first two National Scenic Trails, the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. And we wanted to use this golden anniversary as a golden opportunity, not just to celebrate, but discuss ways to enjoy these trails and learn more about them, and also discuss ways to protect them. So we have an amazing lineup of events over the next 4 hours, a lot of presentations, interviews, and captivating videos. Together, we'll get to learn a little bit more about the history of these trails. We'll talk about some of the current opportunities and also challenges that face them. We'll get to do interviews with people who have spent, some of them, not just their careers, but their lives being involved with these trails and protecting them. We also have a very special guest joining us. Cheryl Strayed, the best-selling author of Wild, will be here to talk a little bit more about her experiences on the National Scenic Trails. And we hope that today you not only enjoy this event and watch it, but that you also participate. There are several ways to do that. I encourage you to go to the website atpct50.org, and there you'll see the live stream of the event, and you can also find the online auction. Check it out, because there's some great gear. There's also some vacation rentals and backcountry excursions, so you'll want to do a little online shopping. You can also, while you're there, make a donation, and I want to assure you that all funds coming in today, whether it's a direct donation or through the auction, they're going straight to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and Pacific Crest Trail Association, and they will be split equally. Now, while you're joining us today, I encourage you to share some of your memories or photos or experiences from the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. And if you do so online, or if you want to let other people know about this event, feel free to use the hashtag ATPCT50. And as we get going, I also want to offer a big shout out to our two main sponsors for this event, Sierra Nevada Brewing Company and Northwest Federal Credit Union. Now, to kick it off, it is my pleasure to introduce the two people who spearhead these conservation organizations. We have the president and CEO of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, Suzanne Dixon, and also the executive director and CEO of the Pacific Crest Trail Association, Liz Bergeron. So Liz and Suzanne, thank you so much for being here, not just today, but every day on behalf of the trails. And I want to start by asking you all a very important question. What does the National Trail System Act mean for the American people? Liz, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Jennifer, for the wonderful introduction. And I think the act that named the trails as National Scenic Trails is just an incredible gift to not only the American people, but really to the world. And it's the opportunity to enjoy recreation, to get outdoors, and to connect with nature, which is so important for all of us. It really is about the impact on people's lives, is what I've learned from being involved.
Awesome. Suzanne?
It's an opportunity to think about what we've accomplished since 1968, but it's also an opportunity to think about what was happening in our country in 1968. When you think about Martin Luther King being assassinated, and you think about Robert Kennedy, and you think about how we united as a Congress and as a country to create an act like the National Trail System Act, and how the outdoors gets to be a really, really great part of that as we continue to move forward.
That's awesome. Thank you guys. And this is a question, this next question, I'm sure it could take the next 4 hours, but briefly, can you talk about the opportunities and challenges that face these trails today? Liz, why don't you go first again?
All right. Well, you know, it's interesting. In President Johnson's natural beauty message in 1965, he talked about how the growing population would be encroaching on these trails and natural beauty areas. And certainly for the Pacific Crest Trail, securing the corridor is one of our biggest challenges. We still have about 10% of the trail on private property, and we are working very hard. Time is really critical in buying up the property, getting it into public ownership. And ironically, the Land and Water Conservation Fund, one of America's greatest conservation acts, expired on September 30th. So we're working hard to make sure that Congress gets the message about how important this fund is to securing corridors like the Pacific Crest and other national scenic trails.
Thanks, Liz. Suzanne?
And I echo a lot of what Liz has spoken about. For us, stewardship is a big part of protecting and conserving the trail. When I think about Benton MacKaye in the 1920s and him talking about a populous eastern United States, I ask myself, my goodness, what would he think today? And the amount of people who are getting on the Appalachian Trail, were over 3 million visitors that are getting on the trail every day, and thinking about also opportunities as well as challenges like engaging the next generation. And we are fortunate to have 6,000 amazing volunteers giving back 250,000 volunteer hours every day. Our challenge is, how do we engage that next generation in becoming trail maintainers? And really being at the forefront of coming up with some pilot projects to really deal with that kind of a situation. And also thinking about the AT as a wildlife corridor, not just from the view shed and the aerial views that you see when you're on the trail. How do we think about the AT as ground zero for bird migration? Mm-hmm. How do we protect the trail from that perspective? And really thinking about ways that ATC can become involved with institutions like the Smithsonian, and leveraging their partnership and their brand to really build awareness around the AT from a bird migration perspective.
Cool. That's awesome. And Suzanne, you just touched on this, so I'll turn it back to you, and then Liz, you can close us out. But the final question I have for you today is, what can people do right now to get involved?
Right now, I would say there are lots of things that you could do. Number one, find your own hike. I encourage you to get out there and get on the trail and experience it. And I think that you will have such a personal story and a takeaway that will help you decide how you want to engage. From there, you could donate to ATC or PCT. I encourage you to maybe become a member of the volunteer club locally. In our backyard here, we have the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club. There's also ways to become an advocate. As Liz mentioned, the Land and Water Conservation Fund expired. It is so important that we hear your voices on Capitol Hill, and your voices in your community, and reaching out to your member of Congress and letting them know how important a resource the AT is in your backyard, from an economic development perspective and from a job creator, not just conservation. So thank you so much for picking up the phone or writing a letter to the editor or going to a town hall meeting. We need all of those. Thank you.
There are so many different ways to be involved. I think I'll touch on the volunteer opportunities. So within Pacific Crest Trail Association, we're really working to expand the number of volunteers who are involved in non-trail maintenance activities. Our trail maintenance volunteers are really, I like to refer to them as the heart and soul of our organization. And it was really the trail maintenance volunteers who started our organization. Beyond that, we have opportunities to get involved in advocacy. We bring volunteers to Washington, D.C. during Hike the Hill Week every year. Opportunities to come into the office. Our administrative volunteers have just been fantastic. Of course, our board of directors is all volunteers and provide amazing leadership for the organization. We wouldn't be here without the support of our donors and our members. So becoming a member, making a contribution to something that really grabs you is another really critical way to be involved.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Liz, and we'll see you a little later in the event.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So I know for me as a woman, it's just really empowering to see these other females working in conservation. It's awesome to hear what Liz and Suzanne have to say about the challenges and opportunities facing these trails. But these private organizations also work as a much bigger team. These trails are public-private partnerships, and that's part of what we're celebrating today. So now I want to introduce another female in conservation, the superintendent of the National Park System, Wendy Jansen.
Happy 50th anniversary to the National Trail System Act, and happy 50th birthday to the Appalachian National Scenic Trail as a unit of the National Park Service. Secretary of the Interior Stuart Udall once said of the AT, "None who has seen it has not marveled, none who has traveled it has not been moved." At the center of our model cooperative management system are our incredible volunteers, 31 clubs strong. It is often said that the soul of the AT is found in its volunteers, and I couldn't agree more. In the National Park Service, we like to say that we're in the perpetuity business. We are here because of so many who have come before, and what we do now is for future generations. Our team is committed to protecting this incredible resource, the heart of the East. To think that 2/3 of the American population is within a day's drive of some portion of the AT. It's amazing. Thank you for helping us preserve and protect all of our national trails.
Appalachian Trail is a really unique place. It's over 2,000 miles long, but we can't manage it all by ourselves. The National Park Service is part of the unique cooperative management structure along with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and 31 trail clubs up and down the length of the trail.
Along with our partners at the United States Forest Service, other federal agencies, and state land managers, we welcome an estimated 3 million visitors to the trail each year.
We're working to keep the trail's world-class natural, cultural, and recreational resources in good condition for the next 50 years. Through the Appalachian Trail Landscape Partnership, we're working with over 70 organizations and agencies to promote cooperative conservation along the 2,200-mile Appalachian Trail.
Our office provides administrative support for 1,400 facilities from Maine to Georgia. These include the hundreds of campsites, shelters, and privies used by trail hikers.
Hi, my name is Matt Robinson, and in honor of the 50th anniversary of the National Trail System Act, I produced this map, which includes the Appalachian Trail and 29 other scenic and historic trails that make up the National Trail System. If you'd like a copy of this, you can download it free at pnts.org.
What will the next 50 years hold? It's up to us to keep moving this vision forward.
Okay, awesome. Hopefully you enjoyed that video, and it's been so great to hear some of the key players in conservation so far. Now, I hear on the internet there might be a little trouble with the Facebook live stream, but hikers are all about Plan B. So I hope right now you're watching us on our microsite, atpct50.org. And it's great that you're there watching this, because while you're there, you can check out the auction. Now, I was maybe perusing and scheming about this auction last night and this morning, and when I was looking at it, one of the things that stood out to me was there are 2 VIP tours to the Sierra Nevada brewing facilities. And that's awesome. Number one, I love Sierra Nevada beer. I think their pale ale is what turned on half of America to craft beer. But number two, if you're a hiker on the Appalachian Trail or Pacific Crest Trail, the breweries are pretty close by. Out west, they're located in Chico, which is within an hour of the Pacific Crest Trail. And on the East Coast, they opened a relatively new facility in Henderson County, near Asheville. And that makes me super proud, because Henderson County is actually where I was born. And It's also within an hour of the Appalachian Trail. So we go to Sierra Nevada after a lot of hikes. And it would be really cool, hopefully my husband and I won't bid against each other, but I think it'd be really cool to have the opportunity to have a VIP tour in one of those facilities. I think you should bid, but the good news is, even if you don't win one of those VIP tours, we do have the founder of Sierra Nevada here with us today, and his name is Ken Grossman, and we're going to hear a little bit more from him and how conservation and craft beer go hand in hand.
Thanks, Jennifer. This is Angie Williamson. I'm Director of Philanthropy here with Ken Grossman, and we wanted to say thank you so much, Ken, for supporting this event, supporting the trails, and for being here to celebrate with us today.
Well, I'm happy to. I was just on my drive down here thinking, I think it was just about 50 years when I first started hiking in the Sierra Nevadas.
That's great.
I had a neighbor who was a home brewer and an avid mountaineer and hiker, and he'd started taking the neighborhood kids up backpacking at a pretty early age. So I think 50 years ago, I was probably spending my summers in the Sierra Nevadas.
Great. And so about 720 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail does run through the Sierra Nevada mountain range. So we obviously think that's a pretty special place. So, but what's special about the Sierra Nevada to you, to your family, and to your company?
Well, say the Sierra Nevadas were an area I would go during my summers to sort of get out of the hustle and bustle of Southern California. And we had a love of the mountains, my wife and I both, and actually our daughter was named Sierra even before I started the brewery. So really the foundation of our company and a lot of our vision came from inspiration of the Sierra Nevada mountain range.
Great. And so there are a lot of beer companies out there, but many of them aren't giving back at the level of the Sierra Nevada. So can you tell us about how and why you give back to the environmental causes?
Well, as manufacturers, we use resources, and we use water and glass and energy, and so for us, it's just trying to be efficient in our operations, and then trying to give back to the environment where we can. And a lot of what we feel our brand is based on is enjoying the outdoors, and what a better way to do it than to go hike some of the beautiful mountains we have in both of our backyards.
That's right. That's great. So we want to know what are some of your favorite beers, and what would you like after a long hike, or maybe what do you recommend if someone's getting off from trail work and getting all hot and sweaty and tired, and what beer should they try?
Well, our very first beer that we founded our company on was our Pale Ale, and it's still one of the largest selling craft beers in America. We still make it naturally the way we did from the very beginning. We use whole cone hops. It's still bottle conditioned. And so it's a true classic, and I think it's a great one to go with the Sierra Nevada or the Pacific Crest Trail hikes.
Yes, absolutely. All right, that's wonderful. And so we do have the VIP tours, and so I understand if they're out here on the West Coast, that they can come and tour either with you or your daughter Sierra.
Correct.
And then also your son is out there, Brian.
Right, my son Brian's out in North Carolina, and he would be happy to take whoever wins the tickets on a private tour, and I'll do the same out in California if I'm around, or if not, me and my daughter.
Great, and a great lunch in the tap room too, right?
Yes, it's all included, and you'll get to taste some special beers at both breweries.
All right, thank you. Well, thanks again for coming, and we want to turn that back now to Jennifer. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ken and Angie. And now, from beer to history, we're going to talk a little bit more about the long line of stories and people that make the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail what they are today. And we're very fortunate to be joined by two people who know these trails better than almost anyone. On the East Coast, I'm joined by my friend who I have to point out, not only is it a 50th anniversary celebration today, it's also Laurie Pottiger's birthday. So happy birthday, Laurie.
Thank you. It's an awesome day to have a birthday.
Yeah. And then on the West Coast, it's very exciting to welcome Barney Mann. And together, Laurie and Barney are going to spend the next 30 minutes informing everyone, including myself, about just what makes these trails so special and all the work that's already been put into them. And so to get started, Laurie, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself and your experience with the Appalachian Trail?
Well, anybody who knows me knows that the Appalachian Trail is my life. 24/7, 7 days a week. And it all came about when I hiked the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine 31 years ago.
Wow.
In 1987. And it really changed my life, hiking the Appalachian Trail. I just felt like I found everything I had been searching for and had not found before. And after that amazing experience in nature, seeing the best of humanity, that's something hikers say today, I felt like I wanted to devote my life to this trail and to the organization that had made my incredible experience in this beautiful trail possible. So the next year, in 1988, I came to work for ATC. I started in an entry-level job, and I was just thrilled to do anything. I would have stood on my head all day, but I got to talk to people, take orders, answer phones, and then in 1996, I got the information services manager position. So my job essentially got to be to help the public learn how to enjoy the trail, but do so sustainably and responsibly. But wait, there's more. I met my husband right here at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, the love of my life. And he was a former thru-hiker, so he understood my passion for the trail. He was also a trail maintainer. And so I live and breathe the Appalachian Trail here in Harpers Ferry, where I live and work, but that's still not enough. So when I get the chance, I section hike, and I've been working on completing the trail a second time, and I'm 40 miles from completing the trail a second time. And the great thing about that is every time I'm out, seriously, I think about how the Appalachian Trail has been protected by the National Trail System Act, because it has, and I see radical differences in places I go, so that's amazing.
That's awesome, and a good birthday present for you, right?
Amen.
Okay, so now out on the West Coast, Barney, we are so excited that you're here, and we'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience with these trails as well.
Thanks, Jennifer. And first of all, it's a real privilege to be sharing this space with you and with Lori. And I didn't get the memo about orange today.
Orange.
I thought it was great. So in 2007, I walked out the door of my law office, I handed keys and check writing over to two younger partners, and I set out on the Pacific Crest Trail. I followed my wife for 2,650 miles. How many guys have done that? It's the summer of our 30th wedding anniversary. 2015, I thru-hiked the Continental Divide Trail. And last year, I started in Maine and I hiked to Lori's office as part of an AT thru-hike. So I'm what they call a triple crowner. It's really a privilege to be there. And Jennifer and Lori, did you guys know that there are fewer triple crowners than people who have flown in space?
Whoa!
Yeah, actually true. In addition, I had the privilege and honor of serving on the Pacific Crest Trail Association board for 9 years. 3 years of that, I was the board chair. I termed out, at least they told me I termed out. Maybe they were tired of me after 9 years, I don't know. And since then, last 2 years, I've served on the board of the Continental Divide Trail and also served on the board of the Partnership for National Trail System, an umbrella group for all the trails. I'm also a writer and author. I have 2 books out. I have to pinch myself at times. One, of course, is called The Pacific Crest Trail, and the other one, also a cocktail book, is called The Continental Divide Trail. Came out about 7, 8 days ago, and all the royalties, they go to these trail groups. They go to trail groups. And then finally, and I guess the reason why you guys have me on today is I'm regarded as sort of a trail historian. Backpacker magazine called me a geek for trail history, okay? I like what the New York Times said better, and they said that he's the informal historian of the trail. So that's why I'm here. It's a real pleasure, Jennifer.
Okay, awesome. Well, you both have established your credentials. I think people are going to believe you, so that's good. And now I'm hoping you can help me, because today is all about celebrating this National Trail System Act that, you know, was passed 50 years ago. And I think a lot of times it's hard for average people to understand legislation. So can you just tell us a little bit more about this act, what was passed, and why it's important? Lori?
Well, I'll give you just a big picture first, and that's that the act essentially created the framework that we could use to either create or protect national scenic trails. And today we're going to focus on 4 elements of the act. And Barney's going to kick it off with the first element.
Well, let's talk about one. The day before the act was signed, October 2nd, 1968, the two trails, the sister trails, they were built like paupers out of a Dickens novel. They had to sit there and go, oh, please some more. The day after they were signed, they were congressionally designated National Scenic Trails. The National Park Service was directed, you are the lead agency for the Appalachian Trail, take care of it. The Forest Service was directed, you are the lead agency for the Pacific Crest Trail. This is no small matter. It's as if these two Cinderella trails woke up one morning and all of a sudden they were married to princes. Yeah, really important. A second major element is, well, what makes the world go round? And I'm not talking about love, talking about the other thing, and that's money. Is the National Trail System Act established a pipeline that federal funds could flow to each one of these trails. And Lori, why was that important to the Appalachian Trail?
Well, at the time that the National Scenic Trails or Trail System Act was passed, only half of the trail was on public land. So that meant almost half was on either roads or private land. And for the first few decades of the trail's existence, there were handshake agreements with landowners that said, yeah, sure, you can put the trail across my land. But as land values increased and there was population boom and more second homes, the trail location became really threatened in a lot of areas, and trail managers could see the trail really slipping away. And in fact, it was not only slipping away, but shrinking as more sections of the trail were actually forced onto roads as landowners changed their minds and said, I don't want the trail anymore on my land. And so it was really vital to have funds to be able to purchase a permanent protected corridor of land. And you know, that act really changed everything. In fact, I talked to one of our longest serving employees, Morgan Somerville, and he said, really, you know, the act essentially changed everything. It gave the National Park Service, working together with the ATC and clubs, the ability to go out and purchase land. And it also really helped ATC grow to be the entity that it needed to be to make one of the world's premier trails. And so that initial act led the way to authorization of $90 million to help protect a corridor that came to be realized as, on average, a 1,000-foot corridor. And today we have 99.7% of the trail in public ownership on a continuously protected corridor because of it. And what about the PCT? How did the finances and that funding pipeline work out on the West Coast?
99.7%. That's pretty impressive. That's a pretty impressive statistic for the act. For the PCT, where was it in the 50s and 60s? It was more dream than reality. In 1963, Sports Illustrated did a 5-page article. That's great. But the article mainly said, neat idea, beautiful place, nobody knows about it. The author went out of that article and tried to ask people, so who's using the trail? Who's using trail? And the answer he got back was, what trail? What trail? So having a pipeline for money and a trail that had over 1,000 miles not on the ground was huge. One example, 1974, Forest Service sends out a press release, and they say, we are funding Pacific Crest Trail $1 million to build trail. Right? The act made all the difference. And one small example for the Appalachian Trail from the act is in March 6, 1976, the Secretary of the Interior gets up that day and he recognizes a birthday, the birthday of Benton MacKay. It would have been Benton MacKay's 97th birthday because he died a few months before. And what did the Secretary of the Interior do? He says, I'm going to reach into my discretionary pocket fund, and he pulled out $1 million for the AT. Without the act, there would have been no vehicle to do that. And Jennifer, you already stole a little of my thunder because I was planning to say now, speaking of birthdays, we got Lori's birthday, but I have one more birthday I have to recognize. Because here I am, I'm in Sacramento, my wife is in San Diego, and today is her 60th birthday. Thankfully, she knows I love her, and thankfully, she also loves the Pacific Crest Trail. Yeah. Lori, what's the third major component of the act?
The third element is the provision for public-private partnership, and it made that arrangement official. So it had already existed in the management of the AT, but we came to talk about the cooperative management system, and it's not a very sexy term. The analogy that we always use is the three-legged stool, and I wish somebody could help me come up with a more sexy analogy than that, but it works because you have these three major entities involved in the management of the trail: public-private partnership, and without them, there would be no trail. So the first and most essential one is volunteers. And I mean, volunteers built the trail, and we have this wonderful saying for the Appalachian Trail that volunteers are the soul of the trail. And in fact, that's what Benton MacKay said, and that statement is written into the comprehensive plan of the Appalachian National Scenic Trail, if you can believe that. Talking about soul in a comprehensive plan, tell me another one that does that. So volunteers. In 31 local trail clubs, there are about 6,000 of them from Georgia to Maine, and that's your first leg. Your second leg are the agency partners. Those are the entities that own the land. Those are the government agencies. And so the National Park Service is the entity that has administrative authority over the Appalachian National Scenic Trail. And they have lands in 6 national parks that the AT goes through, but even more uniquely, there are all these corridor lands now that the National Park Service owns that it basically were acquired in areas where there was not protected land already. So many of those places where there were roadwalks, those long expanses of private land, we now have this amazing corridor of public land owned by the National Park Service. But the biggest landowner is actually not the National Park Service. It's actually the U.S. Forest Service has more land. The trail goes through 8 different national forests from North Carolina to New Hampshire. And then, in addition to that, so that's 2 big ones, but you've got all these other landowners. In 14 states, you've got dozens of different agencies at the federal, state, and local level. So it's incredibly complex, all the different land managing agencies that the trail goes through, that it takes to keep that leg of the stool intact. And then, of course, the third and final leg is the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. And we were the organization, essentially, that was formed to build and protect the trail. And that has been our role ever since the beginning. And it's a pretty complex job. In fact, we do so many things that it's almost impossible to describe everything we do. But essentially, our role is preserving and managing the trail. But we work with those 6,000 volunteers in 31 local trail clubs. And by the way, half a dozen trail crews as well, and volunteers sprinkled out in our visitor centers, and our board, they make decisions at the highest levels, and they're on the ground digging in the dirt and everything in between. And so ATC plays the role of coordination, training, leadership. I would say we're essentially the lead agency in this partner, but we're all equal. But we're the ones that set policy and are always looking ahead about what resources the trail needs, what threats are coming down the pipeline, what opportunities are there before they even get there, looking sometimes 50 years ahead. So you need all 3 legs of the stool to make the cooperative management work.
Yeah.
So Barney, tell us about the PCT.
Well, this whole principle that these trails should not just be supported by federal dollars or people out in the trail with Smokey the Bear hats and wearing uniforms, but instead this should be a public-private partnership. I don't have a 3-legged stool, but I have an example. Picture me walking into a congressional staffer's office. I'm in Congress. I've been doing this for more than 10 years. It's the end of the day. They're tired. They've seen people all day long, and what do they look like to them? They look like, here, my cause should have more money, more funds. And here's what I get to do instead. I get to start out with, let me tell you about our gift to the American people. Last year, more than 12,000 people dug into their pocketbooks and raised over $2 million for this nationally designated scenic trail. Last year, over 2,000 went out there, sweated, and donated over 100,000 trail maintenance hours to the Pacific Crest Trail. This is a government and private partnership that really works. I'm just here to ask the government to do its part. Powerful message, and it's one of the things that the Act fosters. Let's jump on to the next point, the 4th point. That is, the Act provided for officially designating a route. And that too was important. Lori, I think you had actually a neat little story about how that affected the Appalachian Trail.
So actually, I missed that last thing you said.
It was the designating a route, and I think Brian King had a little story about a flyover.
Oh yes, yes, of course. The Appalachian Trail was completed in 1937. It was not in the best locations. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But with the passage of the National Trail System Act, the volunteers and ATC and other partners were charged with identifying the optimal location. And so what happened was volunteers went out, and Brian just told me this, with whatever large pieces of white things they could find, sheets or large pieces of paper, and they laid them down on the ground, and this was in the winter. So the ideal route that we wanted for the trail could be visualized from an airplane, which was different from the route that was on the ground. So in '71, I believe this flyover occurred, and so it could be documented from the air where the trail should go, the most scenic routes, the more ideal locations for the trail.
Okay, but let me jump in, because I think it gets confusing, right? We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the National Trail System Act, but then Laurie just said 1937 the trail was complete. So I know these trails were built on volunteer hours and hopes and dreams before they were federally recognized. Laurie, can you tell us about the trail before 1968?
Essentially, like how it came to be?
Yeah.
Okay, well, okay. I want to start at the beginning, but there's a pre-story before the beginning that actually I want Barney to tell.
Okay, Barney.
Thank you, Lord. So 2 years ago, I stood in New York City, South End, 12th Street, in front of a five-story tall tent. It's in good shape today, but it's an old brownstone. And I sat there and wondered, am I the first hiker to stand on these steps and know what happened here? The year was 1921. April, a woman walks out of her front steps. Jessie Hardy Stubbs, suffragette, activist. And she walks out that day from her apartment for the last time. New York Times next morning reported that a body was found washed up on the East Side River. Jessie Hardy Stubbs had jumped off the bridge that day, left her husband devastated. And that summer he retreated to the country and he started work on an article. The article was published 6 months after Jessie Hardy Stubbs died. It was published in the Architectural Journal. Her husband lived for 50 more years and never remarried. Her husband was Benton Mackay, and the article that he wrote in his grief was the article proposing the Appalachian Trail. There you go. Lori.
Oh man, wow, it's just so redemptive that such a creation could come out of such tragedy. Laurie, what else can you tell us about the origins of the Appalachian Trail?
Well, that article was really the spark that got everything going, and immediately that concept of having a trail running through the Appalachian Mountains, that first range of mountains that would be accessible to people in the cities who, in this period of rapid industrialization and factories, that the workman could get away and enjoy nature. He now had a car to do it, so this idea just really resonated with volunteers in hiking clubs that already existed, and so it was just in no time. Actually, the very next year, the first piece of the Appalachian Trail was built in New York. Volunteers couldn't wait to get started. In 1925, we had the first meeting of the Appalachian Trail Conference, where people really got together in a serious way to plan what this Appalachian Trail would look like and how it would be managed and where it would go. And then by 1937, just a few years after that article was written, the trail was declared complete. However, so essentially there was a trail on a map. It was connecting the dots. In some places you had a very nice trail, but a lot of places it was just hastily trying to find where you could connect a trail from Georgia to Maine, and it was on roads and just sort of haphazard. I've read actually that parts of the trail actually followed like telephone lines. So what kind of hiking experience is that? So it was connected, but I say that's the first generation of the trail. Yeah. It's nothing like the trail we know today. In fact, almost all of the trail has changed again, but 37 marks the year that it was first completed. And so it took 31 years for the National Trail System Act to be passed. Myron Avery, who was the second famous person associated with the trail, Mackay was known as the thinker and Avery the doer. That's a little simplified distinction, but Avery was the one that went out and actually built the trail with his hands, got the volunteers all excited. He actually started, I think, multiple trail clubs where they were needed in the Mid-Atlantic, the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club down south, and really mobilized volunteers to get that original trail built. And a lot of people worked in the next 31 years to get the National Trail System Act passed. But we could talk all day about that, and there are books written about it.
Yeah. Yeah, some of my favorite footage is Myron Avery pushing a surveyor's wheel over rocks and roots to mark the trail. But Barney, can you tell us a little bit about the Pacific Crest Trail before 1968?
I certainly can. Actually, I want you to remember two names that should be mentioned, one event and one concept. And there'll be a test afterwards. No, not really. Not really. First name, Catherine Montgomery. So who came up with the idea of the trail? And it's Catherine Montgomery, 1926. She walked out the front door of her house, faced away from the bay in Bellingham, Washington. So she had this big bay window. She walked out the front door to go up to Western Washington University. She was a teacher of teachers. She had an appointment that morning, 10 o'clock, with Joseph Hazard, big-time mountaineer. He was coming that night to speak at Mount Baker Club. But he had a day job. He had a day job. There were no trail jobs like yours, Lori, in those days, 1926. He had a day job, and he sold textbooks. He spends an hour pitching his textbook for her, and finally, at the end of the interview, he says, I asked her, are you going to buy my books? And she said, oh, Mr. Hazard, I looked them over last night, and of course, they're the best, I'm going to. But why don't you men of the Mount Baker Club foster an idea for a trail that runs along the entire spine, Pacific coast, from Mexico to Canada, just like this article about the great trail of the Appalachians I'm going to show you. And that's how it started. He took the idea that night to the Mount Baker Club. It caught on. And then, the second name I want you to remember, a few years later, the idea traveled all the way down to Pasadena, California, where Clinton C. Clark, almost 60, who was a George C. Patton, a general with a typewriter. And I've literally seen thousands of his letters, actually carbon copies. Jennifer, do you remember what a carbon copy is?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
I remember.
Good. Carbon copies of these letters he sent to the Forest Service, National Park Service, to anyone and everyone who could help him establish this Pacific Crest Trail. In fact, 2 years after he started, he bragged in a letter to the National Park Service. He said, I've mapped out the entire thing. He'd taken a pencil, drawn on gas station maps. He says, I've mapped the entire trail. He'd have erasers on his maps. He says, it's 65 feet long. He excited a lot of people, and he had a lot of people interested in it, but he needed some catalyst, some great event that would draw attention to the trail. And the idea he came up with, and this is the one event I want you to remember, is a relay. Depression-era boys would carry a logbook up the entire trail, and each relay team would pass it off to the next. He's pitched at the YMCA, and they bought. And in June of 1935, the YMCA PCT relay started. And each team would carry it 50 miles and pass it off to the next. The logbook's over 300 pages. When they finished, it was signed by the governor of Washington. The Secretary of State of Washington affixed an actual gold seal to the logbook. It still exists. And from that moment onward, they referred to the PCT as being real and existing. And that's important. Words are important. Jennifer, you know words are important. You know words are important. And I actually have something here. Can you all see what this is?
Is that a safety pin?
This is a blanket pin.
Oh.
Boys in that era, they largely didn't have sleeping bags. They'd carry a wool blanket over either in their pamphlet, and they'd use 5 of these. This safety pin belonged to Gordon Petrie, who was on the 23rd, the Relay Boys route. I met him at age 89, was able to tell him the significant thing he did over 75 years ago. And the last time I met him before he died, sitting there, he was on supplemental oxygen, he gave me this pin. This was carried on the PCT in 1937. Yeah, love it. And the last thing is more a concept, that is in the 50s and 60s, the PCT was dying. It literally was largely a dream. And the act was like a life preserver that was tossed to it. The act and then all the people who gathered around it. And that, in a nutshell, is the history of the trail. I once had someone ask me, what is the, is there a creation story for the PCT? And I thought about it for a number of years, and there is one. The creation story of the PCT is that our trail has been threatened many, many times. But every time, one person, one small group steps forward, and they save the trail. And now it's up to all of us. There you go, Jennifer.
That's amazing. That's a great creation story and survival story. And, you know, it really strikes me as someone who's hiked the Appalachian Trail and Pacific Crest Trail, when you're on these trails, you really start to compare them and note their differences. But at the end of the journey, it just seems like there's so many similarities. And, you know, one thing we refer to when we talk about these trails are sister trails, because there is such a synergy and similar spirit. And Barney, I heard that you might know a connection between these trails very, very early on. Is that true?
Actually, it is. So have you ever had the experience where you're with a friend that you've known for years and years, and all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, our grandfathers knew each other?
Yeah.
It feels a little eerie. And all right, so walk back in time with me. Benton Mackay went to college. He was at Harvard, 1896 to 1900. Okay, so one of the two names I asked you to remember from the Pacific Crest Trail was Clinton C. Clark, right? Clinton C. Clark went and got his master's, and he overlapped with Benton Mackay for 2 of those years. Harvard at that time was all of 1,750 students. That's smaller than my high school. They must have walked by each other, maybe even sat down one day, talked to each other. Is it possible? Is it possible that something one said to the other actually influenced each other? And it even gets better than that, Jennifer. John Muir, in the same period, came and spoke and gave a lecture at Harvard. Is it possible that John Muir, Benton Mackay, and Clinton C. Clark were all in the same room together at the same time?
I want to believe that they were. That's pretty stinking cool. And what a small world story. And I know it just feels like we've been talking for a little bit, but we're almost out of time with you all. So I'd love, sort of as a closing statement, to hear any additional thoughts you want to add that we haven't covered, and also what the future holds for our national trail system. Lori?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is balancing the desire to share our beautiful national scenic trails with more and more people, to have Americans appreciate this incredible resource that may be in their backyard. I think everyone probably has a national scenic trail within probably an hour's drive. And so how can we welcome more people? How can we also be more inclusive and still sustain the trail's beauty and have that quality of experience? So it really requires innovation. We have to do things differently, but I believe there's room for a whole lot more people on our national scenic trails. And I know there is on the AT, but it's going to take a lot of work and thought and effort and dreaming big, just like our trail forefathers did.
Awesome. Barney, what are your closing thoughts and statements?
Well, I want to leave with some hopes. And what's my hope for the next 50 years? And to do that, I'm going to backtrack for a moment. That is back to Clinton C. Clark. When he was banging away at his typewriter, he would brag, 90% of my trail, 90% of the Pacific Crest Trail is on public lands. Well, you heard Liz Bizeron earlier this morning, and what did she say? Today, there's still 10% that is not protected. It's on private lands. And so my hope is 50 years from now, we'll have another big bash. People like us will be talking about the trail, and they'll be saying that the Pacific Crest Trail is protected, the Appalachian Trail is protected, and the reason why, because of you, Jennifer, you, Lori, me, and everyone out here who's listening to this had a part in that. That's my hope for the future.
Awesome. Think about the presentation in 50 years. That'll probably be virtual reality, right? We'll be on the trail when that happens. Well, it has been, so awesome to find out more about these two trails. I definitely learned some things that I didn't know about the Appalachian Trail and Pacific Crest Trail. And honestly, both of you, Barney and Lori, you are treasures to the trail, and the amount of knowledge and history that you hold in your mind is really something to cherish. So thank you for sharing it with us today, and I know we'll see you all out on the trail. Thank you, guys.
Here, here. Thanks, Jennifer.
So already, we're still in the first hour of this 4-hour event, but I think you're starting to pick up on the fact that everyone matters when it comes to these trails. The volunteers matter, the hikers matter, the senators matter, and even the donations, not just from individuals, but also companies, go a long way to preserving and protecting these treasures. I mentioned earlier we had a headline sponsor, Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. We also have another one that we are so grateful for, and that's Northwest Federal Credit Union. And even though they are Northwest Federal Credit Union, they're not the Pacific Northwest. You can actually find them, well, if you want to look for branches, you can find them around where I am in Harpers Ferry or in Northern Virginia, but you can definitely bank with them coast to coast. So that means regardless of whether you're on the Pacific Crest Trail or Appalachian Trail, you can still use them for their financial needs. And it's pretty cool. One of their representatives is with us here today, and he actually has a special presentation. So we're going to switch over to Suzanne Dixon and our representative from Northwest Federal Credit Union.
Where am I? Go ahead and start.
Good afternoon. It's Suzanne Dixon, President and CEO of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. I'm so thrilled to have Jeff Murgison, Senior Vice President, Northwest Federal Credit Union, with me here today. Jeff.
Well, I appreciate you inviting us. Thank you so much. We're so excited to be here. My name is Jeff Murgison, Senior Vice President of Member Experience for Northwest Federal Credit Union. On behalf of our entire executive team at Northwest Federal, I am honored to be here today with our community partner, the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, to celebrate 50 years of National Scenic Trails. I'd also like to present this check for $10,000 to the ATC to help support their continued work, as well as celebrate 50 years of the ATC and PTC.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And I'd like to just say a word or two about your partnership for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. You are a model in terms of the partnership that you bring to ATC, not only from a financial perspective, but from bringing your employees out on the trail and helping us manage the trail. You also have a wellness program at your credit union where people are virtually also hiking the trail. So you really embody what it takes to be a partner at ATC far beyond the check. And so really grateful for your partnership and for all the work that you and your team does to support and protect and preserve and manage the trail for ATC. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate that. Many of our members actually live along the trail, particularly in Virginia and North Carolina. So the work you do in protecting and promoting and preserving the trail is so important to us. A little bit about Northwest. We were founded in 1947 to serve the financial needs of our field of membership. And even though we're headquartered in Herndon, Virginia, we have access to over 5,100 locations nationwide through our shared branch network. We offer a variety of high-yield savings solutions, as well as low-rate lending products, including mortgages, auto loans, personal loans. But one of the things, as you mentioned, we are most proud of is our employee volunteer time in the communities in which we serve. This year alone, our employees have donated over 6,000 hours back to the community. It's something we are so excited about.
Well, we've been the beneficiary of that on the Appalachian Trail. So again, thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing us to be here today and to serve as the silver sponsor for this event and to serve as the credit union for the members of the Potomac Appalachian Trail Conservancy, the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Thanks.
Thank you.
That is so generous. Thank you, Northwest Federal Credit Union. $10,000 is going to build a lot of water bars on the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. So thank you. And I want you to know as an individual that if you are part of a company or corporation that might be willing to give to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy or Pacific Crest Trail Association, I hope that you're willing to bring that up with them. But I also want you to know that every penny counts. And you know, hopefully at this point you've gone online and looked at the online auction, and there's a lot of really amazing things you can bid on, and a lot of them have a high value or worth to them, but not all of them do. One, for example, hold on. Now, this is my book, The Pursuit of Endurance, and it's probably not going to bring in 10 grand for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and Pacific Crest Trail Association. But one of the things I've realized being a part of these organizations is that it's really important to use your gifts and talents however you can to support the trails. One thing I really love about this book is it captures the stories of some really amazing people who have hiked both trails. People like Scott Williamson, who, I mean, he has almost nearly 20 completions of the Pacific Crest Trail, or Heather Anderson, who she's done the entire Appalachian Trail and Pacific Crest Trail both 3 times. So hopefully you'll get to read some more about them in the book, even if it's not going for $10,000. But one thing I can do to make it a little bit more special today is I'm going to sign it during our live webcast. So if you bid on this book, this is the one you will get, and I am signing it right now. And I will say, to come up with it, in honor of the 50th anniversary, and then some words that hikers really like to use, keep going. Jennifer Farr Davis. Okay, this could be yours, and whether you're working on miles or donations, I hope that we all keep going to support the trails that we love.
The trail has put me on a quest to live up to my potential rather than other people's expectations. When I was 21, I hiked the Appalachian Trail alone. 6 years later, I went back and set the record. But why does it matter? How does hiking 47 miles a day for 46 days help anyone or anything besides my ego? To find the answers, I had to go beyond my experience and learn from the stories of my mentors. I listened as a man from an abusive home and violent neighborhood shared how he found the strength to hike 50,000 miles with a bullet lodged in his spine. I was captivated by the woman who admitted to struggling with weight, insecurity, and depression on her journey to find confidence and become a record setter. I was reminded that our bodies are a gift, and I discovered that physical, mental, and emotional endurance are connected. I found something that helps me make it through the day when my baby doesn't sleep at night, and to survive the pressures of work when it demands more than I can give. I found something that helps me better support my friends struggling through divorce and provide strength to a loved one facing cancer. I may never set another record, but I practice the lessons of endurance daily. We all have our long trails, and very few of them involve hiking or running.
What you need. So I'm so excited, and I can't wait to hear more from her today. Are we connected, Cheryl?
Hi.
Hey.
Dad. Hi, nice to see you. Can you see me?
Me too. We're so grateful you're here. And One of the first questions I have for you, and this can be really conversational, but I know that the story you talked about in your book Wild, it took place in 1995, which is it's amazing because your writing made it feel so present and fresh. But I'm really curious, what's been going on since then, specifically in regards to the trails? Do you still get out and hike?
Oh yes, yes. I decided to go on that hike back in 1995, in part because I loved to go hiking. And while I didn't have any backpacking experience before I took that hike, I was an avid day hiker. And it's still true. My favorite thing to do when I get to do whatever I want to do is to go for a hike. And my kids know that. They know every birthday and Mother's Day they're going to have to go on some long hike, which I love. And I get out there more often than that. It's the thing that makes me feel the most whole, which is really the reason I decided to go hike 1,100 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail back in 1995.
That's awesome. And also, you're apparently a better mom than I am, because on my birthday and on Mother's Day, I asked to go for a hike by myself. So that's pretty cool. You take your kids with you on those special days. One thing I wanted to ask you, because I hike the trail as a young female by myself, and one of the biggest questions I've gotten since then is, well, you know, what about safety? And I don't even want to address that, because I feel like the bigger question with you, and I'd love to hear your answer, why is it so important for young women to have an adventure like this?
Well, it is important, and it's connected to that question that so many people have. When we think of a woman alone walking, whether that be in the wilderness or in an urban environment, we think of a woman as prey. We think a woman as a potential victim. And I think that so much of doing things by ourselves, like going on long walks in the wilderness, or frankly, you know, a walk, for some people just to walk, you know, around their block by themselves feels like a new thing, a scary thing. And I think that it's doing those scary things that make us strong. And, you know, I won't say that I wasn't ever afraid when I was hiking alone on the Pacific Crest Trail, and even sometimes now when I go for a hike by myself, which, like you, I love to do. There are those times where I feel a little bit like, okay, that was a little scary. But I think that those experiences are really powerful, because the more we do the things that scare us, the more we become brave, the more we have the strength to go it alone. And we do have the strength to go outside of that comfort zone. It makes us stronger to test that strength.
That was really beautifully said. Thank you. And along those lines, I am curious. So there were times where you felt scared on the Pacific Crest Trail, and you felt exposed and vulnerable, which any hiker at any age, regardless of their gender, if they're in a group or not, that's part of the trail experience. But for you, what was scarier, feeling vulnerable on the trail or feeling vulnerable and exposed by writing a memoir?
Oh, for sure, the memoir. I mean, that's the thing that was interesting about the hike itself is, you know, a lot of that fear was really just at the beginning. You know, it's like, oh, okay, I have to learn how to be alone. And every time I've gone backpacking solo since then, which I've done, you know, several times, that first couple of days, I remember that I have to, you know, get brave again. And writing is somewhat that way too. Wild isn't the first thing I've written in which I told the truth about myself or exposed myself in ways that were pretty personal, sometimes unflattering, essentially welcoming in some ways. If you're going to feel judgmental of me, I'm the one saying to you, I'm telling you all the reasons you can feel judgmental of me, right? And so, you know, that was scary. And before Wild was published, I was really afraid. What are people going to say about it? And I realized, again, it's just like doing anything. It's like, are you going to let fear be the thing that defines your life? And so, you know, the safer choice would have been to never be a writer, and especially never be a writer who decided to go all the way and tell the whole most personal truth. But I'm not that person. So, you know, I think that when I made that long ago to be a writer, part of it was embracing the notion that I would be constantly confronting my fears. And I never imagined that I would have to confront it in such a gigantic way. When I was writing Wild, I wasn't sitting there thinking, wow, this is going to be a bestseller. This is going to be made into a movie. I didn't know any of that. I really just was writing it because I hoped to find a little audience for it. I never imagined so many people would know my story and know about my life, intimate parts of my life.
Okay, well, that will lead me then to this question. Your book found a huge audience, which is awesome. And because of that, though, a huge audience then found the Pacific Crest Trail. And I was looking back at some statistics. I think the year you hiked, 1995, they don't have everyone who tried to do the whole thing, but they keep, track of the people who record their finishes. So there were 19 finishers the year when you were on the trail. When I did it 11 years later, 2006, there were 139 finishers. And now there's 800 or more, and they're going to probably hit 1,000 in the next year or two. So some people, when they talk about the Pacific Crest Trail, will ask, well, did you hike it before Cheryl Strayed, meaning when your book was published, or after Cheryl Strayed? And I want to just hear your thoughts on the popularity of the trail growing so much after your book, and if you feel any responsibility towards that, good or bad.
It fills me with joy. I love that my book inspired people to go hiking, and they inspired people not just to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, but trails all over the world, honestly. Every day I have in my email inbox stories from people telling me of the walks they took because they read Wild, and it makes me happy. And I also, I get it. I understand how fun it is to be the only one on a trail. I mean, I too enjoy going on a day hike and not finding a lot of other hikers out there. But, ultimately that's just really a kind of impossible way of thinking about the wilderness, right? I mean, we want people to go enjoy our national scenic trails. The reason that they even exist is because people need them and love them. And here we are celebrating 50 years of the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail. And, the thing that keeps them vibrant and alive is people setting foot on them, and people using them, and people finding, their joy on them, and people being challenged by them, and people being kind of, losing toenails on them, right? I mean, that's what I just think it's one of the best legacies of Wild, honestly, is that it inspired a lot of people to go check out this trail that I love so much.
Yeah, I think that's awesome to hear. And on that note, I like to remind people that when it started, the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail were the first two national scenic trails, but now it's a large family. I could be wrong, but I think there's around 27 now nationally designated scenic trails. So a lot of these other trails that are lesser well known need the inspiration from books like Wild, where they need the hikers and they need the resources, and there will be spillover naturally from the Appalachian Trail and Pacific Crest Trail, where hikers go and find these own paths in their own backyards. And so I think it's really good for the entire family of the National Trail System that books like yours come out and champion hikers having transformative experiences. I am curious, another popular trail, the Appalachian Trail, have you been able to experience that anywhere, anyway?
Yeah, actually, so I lived in Massachusetts, let's see, in 2002, 2003, right there in the early 2000s. I lived in Sheffield, Massachusetts, near Great Barrington, and the Appalachian Trail goes very near there, and I would go on day hikes all the time. I also picked up several hikers along the way. By the time, when they would hitchhike, I could see that they were backpackers and thru-hikers. And, I would never pick up a hitchhiker in any other context. But because of my experience, the only time I've ever hitchhiked is when I was hiking the PCT. I picked up many backpackers, when I lived in that area. And I've always thought that I should hike the AT with my family. My kids are now 14 and almost 13. And I do think that the AT, I would love to hike. I hiked many trails with them. Last year we went actually and hiked a couple trails in New Zealand, and they were amazing, and they left me in their dust. But I've always thought that the AT would be particularly family friendly because you get to go to town more often, so I could sort of, give my kids the promise of pizza every 3 days or something and get them to do it.
Okay, so speaking of pizza, when I read your book, I was like so thirst quenched for Snapple lemonade. I was like, this has never once appealed to me before in my life, and now I just need to drink as many Snapple lemonades as I can find. And so I'm wondering, since that was your trail treat 20 years ago, what do you pack for snacks, or what is your reward when you finish a hike now?
Well, some things never change. I will say that when I go hiking, there's just something about craving that idea of lemonade, which is so thirst quenching. And honestly, when I was writing about Snapple lemonade, I was in no way thinking that this would be like a boost to the company, or like it wasn't product placement. It was just for whatever reason I craved that drink. But I also, I really enjoy a cheeseburger after hiking. There's just something about like a big cheeseburger after you've really done your work. And I'll admit too, after the lemonade, I do like a glass of white wine, which is not something I got often on the PCT at all.
Yeah, I always found like a glass of wine helped not so much with the hiking, but the riding side, it felt very effective and nice. I'm curious, you've mentioned your kids several times, and I'm a mom and a hiker, but sometimes my kids aren't always as excited about the trail as I would hope that they would be, and so we work with that. But are your kids hikers, and is it important to you that they also have a love of hiking?
Yeah. Well, there's this theory. I remember when my kids were babies and toddlers and first starting to eat real food, and their pediatrician would always say, always put vegetables on their plates, even if they won't eat them, because if you keep doing it, eventually they will. And this is what happened with hiking with me. I would take them out hiking from the really young age. I mean, I'm not kidding you when I say when my kids were like 2, they would go on 2 and 3 mile hikes and they would walk. And so early on, this was part of our family life. And what's really been cool is just to see how they've taken it on themselves. And so this time last year, basically, my husband and I pulled our kids out of school and we went and traveled around the world together. And the first thing we did is we went to New Zealand and we hiked the Rootburn track and the Milford track. And we were with, they were the only kids hiking. Okay. It was everyone else was an adult. And I was really worried that they would be whining, and I would have to, that they would just be saying, I can't do this, and on and on and on. And what happened, honestly, is that, I was back there in the back of the pack, and they were the leaders. The guide who took us on those hikes could hardly keep up with my kids, and I realized, that they were starting to feel that sense of pride and ownership in the hikes. And this has been really true. My kids go to camp in Vermont every summer, and my son there's this all hiker kind of award that they give to the kid who hikes all the trails on the mountain that's near their camp. And very few kids do it. I mean, very few. And I arrived to pick up my son, and I saw that he had done it. And he looked at me and said, well, Mom, I kind of have to because I'm your son. But what was beautiful about it is I can tell now that my kids are taking ownership over this, and they're enjoying it the same way I do.
Yeah. Well, that's really good to hear and hopeful. I definitely started my kids young, but I think my mistake is I always carried my daughter, and her trail name is even Hold Me. And so she got used to it. But now that she's 5, she still wants to be carried every time, which is not as cute. So I thought it was really interesting. I was looking at your Instagram profile, which I hope people here consider following you on social media because you put out some great stuff. But I think one of the things you had in your bio is that you are an extroverted hermit. And I was so taken by that because I think so many hikers that I meet, we talk about the importance of community and how awesome that is and how we need it, and also how we also love solitude and how that feeds our souls. So I was wondering if you could just describe that a little bit more, and even maybe in terms of the trail.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny because so many people respond to that, because for so many years, I could never quite articulate what I was, because anyone who knows me, it's very clear and easy to see I'm an extrovert. I'm very comfortable talking. I love to talk. I've never been a shy person. And yet I've always been somebody who loves to be alone. And I was adamant when I decided to go hike the PCT in '95 that it would be something I had to do alone. And it's because in solitude is the place where I find, I guess, that I can reach that sort of deepest sense of myself and hear that inner voice more clearly. I think all of us experience that in solitude. And there's also something about just the pleasure of being in your own company, and every challenge that comes along is one that you have to face alone. That's a very empowering experience. So I'm a big advocate of solitude, both on and off the trail. But I think in particular, for me, one of the things I wrote about on the Pacific in Wild was I loved all the people I met, and I loved, sharing a camp space with them or talking, sometimes hiking with them. But there would always be, and I wrote about this in the book, every, couple days I'd be like, okay, now it's time for me to be alone again. And I would say goodbye to those companions. And that always felt like that I had to really try to protect my experience in solitude out there. And, I just think it's a thing worth doing. I think the hermit in our society, the lone wolf, is sort of misunderstood, often framed as a kind of antisocial person. But really, it's just about the human need that I think I share with everyone, to be alone, to hear that voice again in a way that you can't hear it in the company of others.
That makes my hiker heart so happy to hear that. Thank you for speaking that out loud. I also, I just want to say, I mentioned it in the introduction, I'm not sure you heard it, but one of the things I love about your book, and I think is so important, is that you're not a thru hiker, and you didn't do the whole trail. Not that you couldn't have, but I think when you hear about these long trails and how far they go and how much time you can spend on them, sometimes the people who do the whole things get a lot of attention. But to have a life-changing experience, you don't have to walk every step of the trail. And what I love even more now is hearing you just as a really busy, successful mom that still goes out there to find something that you need, and you can do it on day hikes. So do you have any thoughts about people experiencing the trails on their own terms?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wonderful to thru-hike the trail, but I think that you have to go out there. There's that lovely phrase, you have to hike your own hike.
Yeah.
And for me, anyone who's read Wild knows that money was very tight, and I didn't have parents, or I had no network of people who were going to be, helping me financially, really any other way. And so I knew I had enough money to fund a 3-month hike, and I was out there 94 days, and I finished my hike with 20 cents. So, I think that you've always got to ask yourself, no matter what you're doing, but when you're undertaking something like the trail, is to say, well, I want to have this experience, and how does it fit into my life? How it fit into my life is I could give 3 months to it. That's what I could afford. I know that Nick Kristof and his daughter, have slowly but surely been hiking the trail. Are they now into Washington, right? They're nearing the end of their, years-long thru hike, right? And I think that sometimes it's like what I have is an hour. Sometimes it's what I have is a week. Sometimes it really means
Okay, so I think Cheryl went to go take a hike, hopefully just for like a minute or two, talking about how important that is. She should rejoin us in just a minute. But I do want to point out, it's really interesting to me, and her book and most books. Hey!
You lost for a second.
Yeah. I can hear you. I'm not sure when you dropped off, but do you mind if I ask a new question to get us on the same page? Is that okay?
Yes. Did you hear my answer at least?
I just thought you went to go take a hike because you're talking about how important it was. So we're going to bring us back to a different question. You and I have a mutual hiking contact and also an author and a beautiful woman. Cara Richardson Whiteley is someone who I think we both know, and I love her work so much because she spent her life struggling with her weight, and she has a diagnosed binge eating disorder, and she talks about how for her it can be very hard as a female and as a hiker to go out there and feel constantly compared to the image that national ads and media use to portray female hikers. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that or just general body image on the trail.
Yeah, I think that I love Cara's work too. And those of you who are interested in reading her book, it's called Gorge, about her, she summited Kilimanjaro twice, I think, tried 3 times, got there twice. But anyway, yeah, I think it's, body image and women, it's a big thing. And it's everywhere. It permeates every aspect of our culture. And I think it's just, of course, on the trail and in any kind of sport where women are sort of the ideal is always, of course, that elite athlete who's very slender, who meets all kinds of conventional ideas of female beauty. And honestly, I've been a hiker who's been at or close to that body weight, and I've been a hiker who's like what they call a plus size, which I just really call my size. So I've been on the trail and I've engaged in these physical activities at various body weights, and what I can tell you is I'm always the same hiker inside. It's always hard. I'm always confronted with all of the
So, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back.
I lost you again. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening. Is it
okay. I'm just going to put words in your mouth from now on when that happens.
Where did you end with me?
You were just talking that it is your size. Like whatever you are on the trail, it's not plus size, it's not thin, it's your size. Which
and I think, just let me finish. Just say everybody has a right to be on the trail.
Yeah.
And there's no one way a hiker looks. We look all kinds of ways, right?
Yes. And I think it's very, important to distinguish that one person's experience, regardless of their mileage, duration, body type, is not more valuable than another person's experience. But I do want to mention one other woman to you today, partly because this is a celebration of sister trails, and there's a lot of sisterhood here. We talked about Cara, who is awesome. There's also a woman who I'm willing to bet that you've heard of. Her name is Heather Anderson. And this year, she's trying to be the first female to hike the entire Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, and Continental Divide Trail all in a calendar year. And she's 85% through, and I know she is just grinding it out right now, and it's hard. It's hard. So what would you tell Heather or anyone who is on a long, grueling journey? What is the best encouragement you've received or that you can give?
Well, what's beautiful about that question is, honestly, it's the same advice for Heather, who's just way, way beyond, fit, and she has capacity that most of us don't have. The advice I would give to her is the same I'd give to somebody who would have a hard time, hiking a couple miles because their body isn't used to that. And it is just put one foot in front of the other. Remember to keep faith with the step, and that you have the capacity to continue going even when it hurts. And that's true whether you're super fit or just beginning, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. So another thing I'm just curious about is because your first hike was in the 90s, and there have been so many changes since then to our national scenic trails. A lot of them have been better and improvements and connections. Now there's a different type of permit system on the Pacific Crest Trail, and then the advent of technology has really changed things. So what are some of the biggest changes you've noticed in the past 20 years, and do you think they're good or bad for the trail?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's such a good point. Honestly, Wild is in some ways a history book. It's writing about a trail that, you know, obviously still exists, but life as I knew it on the trail no longer exists. And that is because of the internet and cell phones and all of those things. You know, one of the things that, you know, people make fun of me, and I made fun of myself. Like, I knew very little about the Pacific Crest Trail or long distance hiking before I went out there. But it wasn't because I didn't try to know. It was just really harder to get information. You couldn't just log on to some website and find out everything you need to know about the PCT. You know, I had that guidebook. There wasn't a lot of trail literature. There weren't a lot of trail resources. And now it's just a vast world of information and connectivity. And you can, you know, I've tweeted from the PCT, hey, I'm on the PCT, you know, press send. And so there's a way in which, you know, there's just so much more information and access. And like with anything, that has a plus side, but that has a downside. I think that the internet disrupts our sense of solitude on the trail, and that makes me sad. And there was some kind of extreme self-sufficiency that I had to confront when I was on the trail because of that lack of connection. I mean, there were many times that I thought, okay, if I want to talk to somebody, I have to walk for like a week before I reach the nearest payphone. And that was it. That was it. If you wanted to talk to me, you had to write me a letter and send it to the post office that you thought I was maybe going to go to, you know? And there's something incredibly cool about that. And I'm sad that that's no longer the story of the trail. But it has to change with the times. I don't think there's any way around it.
Yeah. Okay, so my next question is related, but you wrote this beautiful, inspiring book, Wild, and you painted yourself as this young woman out on an adventure, and now, you know, 23 years have passed. So what has been, and I'm sure when people read Wild, they feel like they know you, and they certainly do get to know a season of your life, but what's been the biggest change for Cheryl Strayed since the book Wild, or since your adventure that's based in the story Wild happened in 1995?
Well, you know, really, I was in so many ways walking the trail to restore my sense of wholeness and strength, and to find a healthier, happier path in my life. And the PCT was the beginning, really, of the next era of my life, the one. Here I am 50. I turned 50 a couple weeks ago. I love that I share a birthday with the AT and the PCT. Yeah. I mean, I know they existed before 50 years, but the you know, official designation, we share a birthday. And, you know, I reached that sense of, you know, I've really achieved all of those things personally that I was looking for on the trail. That sense of peace and joy in my heart, and a sense that I was going to be okay. That doesn't mean there haven't been struggles, obviously, in these 23 years. I'm a person, but I, you know, changed the direction of my life, and I never looked back. And the PCT gave me really that sense that I could do the thing I just told Heather and every other hiker to do, that I could put one foot in front of the other, even when it hurt. There was always something beautiful around the next bend. I really believe that that's true, and that's true on our national scenic trails, and it's true in our lives as well.
Yeah, and you know, I think a key part of that is you still have these lifelong lasting memories and lessons from the trail, and I think part of being a hiker, a responsible hiker, is showing your gratitude for that and helping the trail. And I want to thank you. I mean, just by being here today, you're supporting the trails, but you know, I know that you've been a longtime supporter of the Pacific Crest Trail. And what would you say to people to sort of encourage them to step up and volunteer and give back and use their gifts to support these trails?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are many things that we can and should do to support trails. I think supporting, you know, trail organizations environmental organizations, wilderness organizations, but also I think it's been made pretty clear that it's also really important that we elect candidates into office who care about public lands and who care about protecting our wild places. And the politicians who make the decisions about public lands and things like national scenic trails make a huge, huge impact. Their legacy is felt for decades. You know, we're sitting here today 50 years after President Johnson signed into law this National Trails Act, and it, you know, here, you and I, Jen, have benefited from it, and so many millions of people have as well. And I think that is really what I'm thinking about these days, is getting into office people who care about these issues.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we owe it to the generations who come after us to do right by our public and wild lands.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, we had Suzanne Dixon, the president and CEO of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, mentioned earlier in this webcast that 1968 was not this harmonious time. There
Right.
was a time with a lot of strife and a lot of division, and it really was this collaborative act and bipartisan effort to give America this gift. And so that gives me great hopes that we can continue to preserve these gifts and recognize the importance of public lands. Speaking of that, I'm curious. So I mentioned how much I like that you're not necessarily a through hiker. When you did the PCT, you didn't feel like you had to do the whole thing, and maybe because of limitations. But is there a part of you that wants to experience every step of the trail?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been back on the PCT many times, and in some cases have hiked parts of the trail that weren't part of my wild hike. And yeah, I guess I just need to find the time. I mean, that's one of the things, the great ironies of my life has been that during the time that I've talked the most about hiking is also the time I've had the least amount of time to go hiking. So I haven't been able to find the window of, you know, the 5 or 6 months. Let's face it, it'll probably take me closer to 6 months to through hike the PCT.
Yeah.
But I aspire to. You again?
Yeah, there was a brief pause.
Here I am.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
That's cool to know that you want to do the whole trail. And you know, I totally consider you an endurance athlete. Anyone who hikes 1,000 miles is a long distance hiker. And on top of that, I know that well, I know you have several books, and particularly Wild, I know you wrote when your 2 children were relatively young, and I can't express in my experience how difficult it is to write with 2 young children. So I'm just curious, what was harder for you, hiking the trail or trying to get that book out and be a mama?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're right. I mean, my kids were like 3, 4, 5, 6 when I was writing it. And I don't know how I did it, actually. I look back and I think, like, what did I do? Because I also had no, you know, I was under such stress financially. Mm-hmm. My husband is a documentary filmmaker. It wasn't like, well, you know, he goes to work and I have a nanny and I just sit down and write, which would be hard enough. But I was just, you know, really like supporting myself and didn't have any, I mean, it was hard. It was hard. But I think that I would say that the trail, one of the things the trail really gave me, and hiking, long distance hiking really gave me, is humble persistence. And I love that you're seeing that, you know, I never am going to be the person who's going to stand up and say, well, you know, I'm the fastest hiker, or I'm the champion hiker, or I did it the right way. You know, but what I did do is I had humble persistence, and I kept going, and I walked every mile that, you know, everyone else walked. You know, I mean, I hiked that. You say 1,000, I say 1,100. I'm not going to.
My bad. My bad. I don't want to take that away from you. 1,100.
I earned those, yeah. But so, you know, humble persistence will get you far in writing and in hiking and in life. And that is, again, just saying, okay, I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to do it every day.
So, you know, we've talked a lot in our time together just about personal transformation, but one of my hopes just for individuals in this country is that more people spend more time outdoors. And I'm curious what you think would be different culturally if more people spent more time outdoors.
Oh, that's such a great question. I think that you can't, you know, it makes you feel a sense of connectedness, not just to your fellow humans, but to really the planet, that you see always in nature, the fullness of life, the destruction, the creation, the cycles, and beauty. You know, one of the things that I experienced every day on the trail, even when I was in the car, is of course I went and hiked that trail because I was grieving my mother. There were so many times that I felt such sorrow on my hike, but I always did, you know, felt also in the company of beauty. And I think being in the company of beauty is a life-changing experience. I remember waking up on the last day of my hike along Eagle Creek in this area now that has had a terrible wildfire, I'm sad to say. But I remember waking up and seeing the trees, the leaves and the trees and the branches like blowing gently in the wind above me. And I just thought, this has changed my life. To wake up every morning to see that. You know, I said it was like the accumulation of trees. I wrote about that in Wild. The way that this beauty accumulates over time is life-changing. And I think that there's no way to ever forget that experience. It's in you, and it becomes part of what you are in the world as well.
I completely agree. And one thing I wanted to ask you, but I didn't want to ask you, is did you have a favorite spot on the Pacific Crest Trail? Because for me, I know it's just like, how can you itemize or prioritize this beauty? But I do think there's places, what you just described, that or maybe what the Celtic people refer to as thin places, where you feel really in tune to something much bigger than yourselves. And I know when you're at that place, you will never forget it. It will always be a part of you. So you just mentioned Eagle Creek, but were there any other thin places for you on the Pacific Crest Trail?
There were so many. There were so many, and that's why that question, I'm with you. It's hard to answer, because also it's like, you know, it's kind of like if you lined up all the, you know, the people you love in your life, and you had to say, like, who's the most beautiful? And, you know, of course there's so many varied kinds of beauty, right? And there's the beauty of, there's great diversity of beauty on the trails, on these wild lands. And so, you know, is it more beautiful to see those snowy peaks of the high Sierras than it is to see the Crater Lake, that beautiful lake, that blue lake that that really I experienced as a sacred moment in my hike? Like, I think what you're talking about, this thin place, I looked out on that lake and I felt a deep sense of healing, because of course that lake is healing. That lake is, you know, was once a place of destruction. It was once this vast crater, and it became this beautiful blue lake. And what a miracle that is to witness that. And you get to witness it on the PCT. You get to walk right up to it and gaze into it and have that moment. But you know, I've also had that moment just like sitting there in the woods, looking around, right? Yeah. The magic of the moment is what you feel in the place you are, where you make contact with the beauty that's available to you. And that's why it's so powerful to not just take a walk, but to take a long walk, because you get a lot of opportunities to have that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have basically like a quote wall after this interview with so many of the things that you said. I'm also personally interested. This is, you know, so fun for me to get to do this. I found long distance hiking and a love for the outdoors before I got married. And I know, you know, before you started your family, you also now have this experience on the Pacific Crest Trail. So is your husband a hiker, and do you enjoy doing it together? And do you tell him what to do on the trail? How does that dynamic work?
Yes, so I met my husband 9 days after I finished my PCT hike. My husband's name is Brian, and he wasn't an avid hiker when I first met him, but he was a walker, and he just would walk for miles wherever he was. And I sort of, once after I got to know him, I realized, oh, that's why he fell in love with me, because he was like, he had heard I just did this long walk, and he was like, I want to know that woman. I always tease him that he's like a dog. He wakes up in the morning and all he wants to do is walk to the park, because he just loves walks. But he's really taken to hiking. And in fact, the first trip we went on together, so we had been together just a little more than a year, and we went and hiked like 3 weeks on the Continental Divide Trail. We started in Silver City, New Mexico, and walked north. And it was kind of a disaster, to be honest with you. First of all, I taught him a lot. He had a lot to learn. But what was disastrous is first, we could never find the trail. I mean, we would like be on the trail and then there would be no trail. We're just like walking through the woods. And we ended up in Pie Town, which we kept seeing Pie Town on the map, and we were so excited because we're like, well, like that sounds like our kind of place, Pie Town. And we get there and there were no pies. We're like, where's the pie? But anyway, there is now, I think, a pie lady in Pie Town, thank goodness. But so we kind of had a funny, one of those experiences that went not exactly as we expected, which, surprise, surprise, happens a lot when you go hiking. But it was glorious and beautiful and fun. And we've hiked many trails since then. That's again, when my husband and I get to do something, that's what we do. We go hiking.
That's awesome. When I met my husband, we both say he thought he was a hiker when we met, but it's certainly ramped up since then. And I'm really, I think it's so cool to hear that you also spent an extended period of time of the Continental Divide Trail, because as much as today is about celebrating this anniversary that includes the Appalachian Trail and Pacific Crest Trail, the Continental Divide Trail is the third jewel in the Triple Crown, and it's such an amazing place, and there are these treasures all over the country, and we need to celebrate them all. And on that note, it feels like it's just you and me here having coffee, and I love it.
I know. I just have water. I don't have coffee.
Oh, there you go. Having some water. There have also been other people who are watching, and they have some questions that they want to ask you. So I'm going to go ahead and see what's come in for you, if that's okay.
Okay. So it's so weird. People can actually...
Well, they typed them in, and then we wrote them on, very, very techie note cards, because that's what hikers do. So... here's the question. Oh, okay. Well, this hits on something you mentioned earlier. How do you handle being lonely on the trail in terms of solitude?
Yeah. I think that it's really important to embrace the difficult parts of any experience. And so often when people talk to me about hiking or even just going on a trip, any kind of travel, is to remember that we almost always start out with a kind of idealized version of what it's going to be. We never imagine, when we imagine solitude, we think, oh, I'll have these profound thoughts. We never think, I'm going to feel kind of lonely. And what I want to say is lonely is part of solitude, and it has something to teach you as well. And sometimes it's just you say, okay, I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to go to sleep early tonight because I feel just sort of sad and lonely, and I'm going to in some way persist through this feeling, and something will change. An hour later you'll feel glad to be alone, or somebody will walk down the trail and suddenly you'll have company. And that's what I've found, is learning to endure the uncomfortable parts, whether that be your foot is hurting or your heart is kind of hurting because you wish you had someone with you.
Yeah. I think loneliness is a part of it, and an important part. And I do quickly want to let people know, if you have questions for Cheryl, feel free to submit them via Facebook, because we're still writing them down on note cards and handing them off so I can ask Cheryl. So if you have questions, feel free to ask on Facebook. And the next one that came in, I think a lot of people are interested in this. Whatever happened to Monster, man? What's the story of your pack? Do you still have it?
Yes, I have it. I feel so terrible because, Monster's just like in my basement, and not in a place of sort of, honored. I have so much of my stuff that I had on the trail, and it's just on this like metal shelf in my basement where I keep my hiking and camping and outdoors equipment. And it's so funny because honestly, nobody was more surprised than me to know that like these objects that I carried with me on the hike became now famous, right? And it's just there. I don't know what to do. Like it used to be just a Crazy Creek chair, and now it's the Crazy Creek chair that I, carried with me the whole PCT, or the Monster, that pack. It's still a great pack. It's really, I love it. No museums. Some museum of the outdoors should contact me, and I don't even know if that's a museum, and I'll give it to them. If somebody wants to hang it up and display it, I'll hand it over.
And this is a related viewer question, but do you have a favorite piece of current gear or modern gear that you like taking on the trail?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, I would say just as a general rule, I think one of the best things that's ever been invented is the headlamp. And my only sorrow, I feel like we should just wear headlamps all the time, like in normal life. Because think of all the times you just wish you had a little light. Like you're reading in bed, you don't have to mess with the lamp, you just got it right there on your head. But people look at me funny if I walk around in my headlamp too often.
That's good to know. I do love a headlamp.
Think of all the time you could just use light right there.
It's true. That may be a fashion trend that you are able to really start. So I encourage you in that effort.
The other thing, since so much has been made about my boots being so terribly painful, I will say I have finally, after much trial and error, found the boots that really I love and that fit my feet great. And they're Anu boots, AHNU. They're like, I have like 6 pairs of them because I love them so much.
Yeah, feet are so personal.
They don't send me free boots or anything.
Well, they will now. But I think feet are just, they're so unique. And once you find that perfect shoe for you, you stay with that shoe. Although I found my feet changed after pregnancy, which was weird. But yeah, I am a big fan of a good fitting boot.
Yeah.
So the next reader question was, if you tomorrow woke up with 5 months to go hike anywhere or have any type of adventure, and I will add with or without your family, where would you go? What would you do?
Oh gosh. This is so hard to say because on one hand, I want to, express my loyalty to our national trails in the U.S. I want to hike the AT, I want to hike the CDT, I want to hike the PCT. But New Zealand captured my heart. Yeah. And they have these wonderful things called the Great Walks of New Zealand. And I don't know how many trails, but it's the equivalent of our national trails. And I've completed 2 of them now. And I would just love to go and do them all. I think it would be an incredible experience. So if I had to stay in the U.S., I think maybe what I'd do is get my family to go hike the whole PCT with me. That would be pretty, it'd be really meaningful to me, I think, to share that with them, to do it in some ways for the first time, because as you said, there are big sections I didn't do and I didn't hike the whole trail, but also to revisit with them the places I did hike.
Okay, so let's just keep going. We'll say on that hike, so I have another question. So you got a lot of grief for all your surplus items that came in Monster.
Yeah.
But if you were going to do it today, you're hiking the whole trail, what are the luxury items that you would still take with you? What are the non-essential pieces of gear that you're like, you know what, I might not need it in the trail, but I need it in my heart, and it's coming with me?
Yeah. Well, and that's it too. So I hiked in '95. It was really just the beginning of lightweight backpacking. There was still this kind of 70s and 80s kind of old school kind of mentality, and I did take too much stuff. But what would I take with me? I think I have no regrets about taking the books I took, taking the big hardbound journal. I know I could have written on some little tiny notebook, but I had this hardbound sketchbook that I treasure. I have this PCT journal to this day. And I think too, for me, one piece of gear that really mattered to me was that sleeping bag that just felt like the right sleeping bag. Like I could have had a lighter one, I could have had a smaller one. I still have my sleeping bag. It was a Sierra Designs bag made for women specifically. And I still love that sleeping bag. It's still like my favorite sleeping bag. And it's amazing how much that mattered to me. And maybe that's kind of an answer to that loneliness thing, is that I think it's important to have items with you that make you comfortable and make you feel safe. And those are some of those things that did that for me.
What would you, I'm going to add on, what would you absolutely not carry in your pack that you took the first time?
Well,
yeah.
Foldable saw. It turns out I didn't need to cut down any trees on the Pacific Crest Trail. But, you know, I have a funny story about that saw. So Meadow Ed, who wasn't even called Meadow Ed yet in 1995, but he's famous on the trail now. And I met him at Kennedy Meadows, and he and I reunited since Wild came out. And the funniest thing, the first time I saw him, I was in Los Angeles doing a reading for Wild, and he was sitting in the front row. I didn't recognize him, but he kept kind of waving at me. And I finally just stopped in the middle of my reading and said, what do you want? And he said, it's Ed, it's Meadow Ed. And he pulls out of his bag the foldable saw that I had brought with me on the PCT. And I had left it in the hiker free box at Kennedy Meadows, and he gave it back to me. And I said, Ed, you know, I'm traveling, I'm not checking my bag. I can't take it through security. I can't get a saw. So he still has that saw. I've told him he could sell, you know, he could sell it, raise money for the Pacific Crest Trail Association or something.
That's awesome. And that actually leads to another question that I have. You mentioned Meadow Ed, who is, you know, a legend, but yeah. Who are some of your kind of hiking or trail angel or conservation heroes that you encountered or you know of and you're really grateful for and you think they're doing really good work? Who comes to mind?
Well, you know, so many people, obviously, like all the folks at the Pacific Crest Trail Association, Liz and Mark. Are you guys listening? Hello, if you are.
Oh, they're listening.
I mean, you know, really important work.
Yeah.
Advocating for the trail, protecting the trail, the people at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, right? Everyone who is in any way, I think, telling the story of why these national scenic trails matter to us as a nation, as individuals and as a nation. You know, they're my heroes, and I really respect the work they're doing, and am grateful for.
Okay, we'll end with one more sort of light question and then an opportunity for you to wrap up with any closing thoughts. But this one is back to food. And you'll find if you hang out with hikers a lot, there's a lot of food topic questions. It becomes very important. Are there any foods you ate on the trail that you can't stand anymore?
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, so here's the last question. Are there any foods that you ate on the trail that you can't stand anymore?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You know, I think that I never again was able to eat really kind of any of those kind of like sort of like fiesta dinner or, you know, noodles and something, you know, that I would just always be living on my PCT hike. Yeah, I kind of left those meals behind. Of course, I've had to eat them. You know, the thing that I take now, for whatever reason, I never got sick of this on the trail, or just, you know, good old-fashioned rice and beans.
Yeah.
It's a good meal.
So we have just about 2 minutes left. I'm just wondering, you know, what question did we not ask that you want to answer, or what are any closing thoughts that you want to leave us with today?
Well, I just want to say thank you to the hiking community and the backpacking community and the trail community for, you know, welcoming me into the fold. And what I love about this community is there are so many stories to tell. And I'm just grateful that I got to be one of them.
Well, we're grateful that you're part of our community as well. And this is technically for the anniversary of the Appalachian Trail and Pacific Crest Trail, but I want you to know it works really well because You had a 50th birthday this year, and we want to thank you and celebrate you. And now we're cutting to a segment where we're also celebrating our first 2 National Scenic Trails with cake. So as you go, we're going to eat cake, and we want to send you some virtual cake too. So here, Cheryl, thank you from all of us, and happy birthday.
And that is so sweet. That makes my day. I'm only sad that why don't I get any cake? That's cute.
I know.
I'll think about eating it, and I hope you all enjoy. Happy anniversary to the trails, and happy 50th birthday to all of you who were born in some fashion in 1968.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Bye, everyone.
So are you doing this? Okay. So this camera's going to be pointing at you.
ATC is pleased to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the legislative designation of the Appalachian National Scenic Trail. This anniversary year, we unite in reminding ourselves of the trail's importance in history and significance in our daily lives and potential.
Gather people up.
Its recreational potential, its natural and cultural resources, there was a lot going on. In 1968 was a time of protest, the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. Yet Congress united in passing the National Trail System Act, united in recognizing that we all need places of refuge and retreat, places that invite and inspire. The Appalachian Trail is that place, a seemingly simple footpath traversing through 14 states, the last contiguous open space in the populous eastern United States. The vision is
All right, you know, hold with your shoes.
Coordinate our toast with our friends on the East Coast. So we're just waiting for the right exact time to be able to offer a toast. And are we ready? We're ready. Great. Well, here's to our friends at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. And we want to say congratulations on 50 amazing years. And best of luck to all of you on the East Coast with our sister trail. Best of luck for the next 50 years and a wonderful, wonderful future for all the national, scenic, and historic. So,
I think that's it.
Okay. That was cute.
okay. So I hope that you enjoy it.
They're definitely hot.
And it's a wonderful day to celebrate. It's very delightful.
Well done.
Stand by.
I'm here at the start.
Jump in. You want more champagne?
I see the senators are coming. I know, yeah.
Cheers to 50 years for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and the Pacific Crest Trail Association and the paths that they represent. We are now halfway through our live broadcast in our 4-hour event. That means we're sort of in Pennsylvania if we're hiking the Appalachian Trail, or Northern California if we're on the Pacific Crest Trail. And it's our opportunity this hour to talk to some of the most important advocates for our national scenic trails, some of the people who represent us in government and Congress. And to start off, I want to welcome Senator Robert Hertzberg, who represents the San Fernando Valley in Southern California. He is the chair of the Senate Natural Resources and Water Committee. Throughout his career, the senator has been a dedicated conservationist, thank you, Senator, and a champion for California's invaluable natural resources and treasures. And we're honored to have him here with us today. Take it away, Senator.
How are you? It's so great. 50 years ago today, we all have our opinions about Lyndon Johnson, but for one great thing, he's the one who signed the National Trail System Act today, on today's date, 50 years ago today. And I got to tell you, it's so much fun to be in the Senate, and particularly chair of the Natural Resources and Water Committee, issues that are so important to me. And to be, we put every single senator, there were 10 senators of California representing 25% of the population, and every single one of them came on as co-authors of this important resolution acknowledging the trail. I just wanted to say to you a couple of things that I wanted to share that really stand out with me. You know, that great day of that 4-day camping trip that Teddy Roosevelt had, and when he came back to the Capitol with John Muir after that great trip that informed so much of his thinking about our national park systems. He said, and I'm going to just read this quote that was grabbed for me that I really like in the Capitol. He says, talking of the redwoods as part of this efforts, he says, I want to preserve them because they're the only things of their kind in this world. Lying out at night under those giant sequoias was like lying in a temple built by no hand of man or human being. A temple grander than any human architect could by any possibility build. It is understanding the majesty of nature. And I think the thing that I find that's so great about the trail is that 22.5 million Californians live within 50 miles of the trail. It literally is accessible to almost everybody in California, all the cities, and the impact and the vision going all the way from Canada to Mexico. It is so extraordinary in the larger dynamic, both with respect to the importance of nature and also with the importance of understanding the human lines, these imaginary lines that human beings draw in the sand, whether they're borders for pollution or borders for nation states, and to understand that it's always much bigger than us, as Teddy Roosevelt said. So for that, for everybody's listening, thanks for letting me be a part of it. I'm in there, I'll stay in there, and congratulations to the association and to everybody who's a part of this.
Hi, I'm Congressman Earl Blumenauer.
Thank you so much, Senator Hertzberg. It was great to hear from you. And now we have the opportunity to hear from another representative. He couldn't be here live, but we are grateful to have a video from Oregon Congressman Earl Blumenauer.
The achievement that you are celebrating today has been incredibly important for my home state. In Oregon, we care deeply about our public lands. Time and time again, Oregonians identify access to the outdoors and outdoor recreation as one of the best things they like about living in our state. From Mount Hood and the Columbia River Gorge to Central Cascades, Steens Mountain, the Oregon coast, we have seen some of the most beautiful scenery in the country, and we've worked hard to conserve it for future generations. The key to that outdoor heritage is the Pacific Crest Trail and our embrace of the National Trail System. The National Trail System functions not only as a means to connect people to the outdoors, but as a physical connection between the diverse communities that make up the fabric of the Northwest and of our nation. It is a key part of the Oregon outdoor recreation experience, and one that we cannot take for granted. Throughout my career in Congress, I've worked to ensure that the Pacific Crest Trail is maintained and that we fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund to continue critically important stewardship and to expand access to the trail. It should be a no-brainer, as they say, but sadly, it's not. But thanks to the tireless work of volunteers and nonprofit organizations, many of which are with you today, we've seen 50 years of conservation and recreation on our national trails. Now we must fight to make sure Congress keeps its part of the bargain. I know you all will continue fighting with me to protect and expand this access with funding so that our special places can be preserved and experienced by all Americans for the next 50 years and beyond.
Hi, I'm Beth Boyce.
Hi, and I'm Jim Bacon. We're with the U.S. Forest Service, and we're here to thank all of you for what you've done to help maintain and steward the Pacific Crest National Scenic Trail. Last year alone, over 2,000 volunteers worked on the trail. That's almost one volunteer per trail mile. And that equated to $2.5 million of public service to support the trail. So volunteers are absolutely our heart and soul of the trail. And we really depend on all of you to steward it.
Trails are really important for communities. They give an opportunity to conserve open space and recreation for all different kinds of users. Today we are really celebrating the history of what's come before us and the visionaries of folks who thought about hiking from Mexico to Canada. How could that be? How could we have this opportunity? And really celebrating the fact that we have folks that are stewarding the trail and taking good care of it.
And the trail provides countless opportunities to get outside and enjoy the great outdoors and connect to nature. Whether you're out for a long backpack on your own, enjoying solitude, or you're out with friends on an equestrian ride, or just a day hike with families. I recently got to get out with my family on a day hike on the trail, really enjoyed it. I was so thankful, so proud to be able to show the trail to my 2 little girls.
The PCT is important to me because it's a platform for change. The trail gives you an opportunity for an extended journey from Mexico to Canada, for a day, for a month. It's a place of reflection. It's a place of escape. It's a place of healing. So one of the really special parts of my job is to get to hear your stories about the PCT and why it's important to you, why it has been transformational. For me, in 1982, I was a nurse at the University of Pittsburgh as a student, and I came hiking on the AT, and here we are today as the PCT Trail Administrator. So it's really been a platform for change for me myself.
Yeah, so thank you. We really just want to thank all of you and the volunteers that put in countless hours to make these opportunities possible for all of us and stewarding the trail. We couldn't do it without you. So again,
happy birthday, PCT!
That was a great opportunity to hear from not only our public representatives, but our partners who work in the U.S. Forest Service. So thank you for all that you do to help the trail. Now, I got my first break in a while, so I spent that time looking at the online auction, which seems to be going well, and it's all good stuff. I will say, if I do get time, things I'm interested in, I use a lot of Gossamer Gear stuff, and they have a bunch of great gift cards and packages on there. And also, the tent I used to hike the entire Pacific Crest Trail in 2006, not my tent, you don't want it, it's stinky, I still have it, you don't want it. But it's Henry Shire's Tarp Tent Rainbow, and it is such a great shelter. So those are the things I've got my eye on, but I encourage you to check out the auction. You can also donate. And you know, I was thinking about that, and sometimes it's hard for me to make donations because I'm self-employed and I really don't know, you know, what our income is until the end of the year, and that's when I make most of my giving. But one thing I can do today, and one thing I encourage everyone to do, just give $50. Just give $50 because, hey, it's the 50th anniversary. And yes, I'd love for you to give, you could also give $50,000, okay? So I'm not excluding that, but I'm just saying it's one very tangible thing that you can do, even, you know, even if you don't know what you're making this year, even if money's tight. I think everyone can scrounge together $50 for the trails that they love, and I pledge to do that today. And if you're watching this online and you want to share your experiences, and we all have so many amazing experiences from these trails, and we've been hearing more about individual and group experiences on these trails throughout this broadcast, please do so by using the hashtag ATPCT50. Now, speaking of those individual experiences, I just love how different people have different emotional connections to the trail. And in the next segment, we're gonna watch some pretty cool videos about people who have experienced the trail in different ways. So I want to tell you a little bit about those quickly. The first is from Tyler Nordgren, and it's so great because he talks about the importance of dark spaces and being able to go out and just sleep under the stars and watch the Milky Way. We'll also get a short shout out from Darwin, who is sort of a long distance hiking YouTube celebrity, so we'll look forward to hearing from him. And then kind of one of my heroes, Bart Smith. This guy is not only a crazy talented photographer, he has hiked all of the national scenic trails. Like, what a cool thing. And I just, man, I think about all the incredible things that he's seen that no one else has seen. So in this next segment, enjoy hearing a little bit more from these three folks.
Sleeping under the stars. Just those words evoke a feeling of being on a mountaintop or in a forest clearing, bundled up in a sleeping bag, and having a sky full of stars overhead. Now, I first got a chance to experience that as a kid in the Oregon Cascades along the Pacific Crest Trail when we were camped along the shores of a lake. And I still remember that when the sun went down and the stars came out, it seemed like every single one of them was reflected in the lake at my feet, so that it was as if I was within an entire globe of stars overhead and underfoot as well. Unfortunately, it's become increasingly difficult to find places where we can still experience that. Over the last 50 years, it's now become true that 80% of the U.S. population no longer lives someplace where it's even faintly possible to see the Milky Way at night. Fortunately, places like the scenic trails, the Appalachian Trail in the east and the Pacific Crest Trail in the west, those places, as well as state and national parks, the protections they afford by day, the thing that brings us there, the wildlife, the woods, the mountains, those protections also protect the views at night as well. So when you're on the Appalachian Trail, hiking through the Great Smoky Mountains, or up in Shenandoah National Park, when the sun goes down, you can still see the Milky Way at night in summertime. And that view of the Milky Way, that pearly band of light that can stretch from horizon to horizon, it's one of the greatest signs that we are part of a vastly larger universe. That Milky Way, it's the light of 100 billion stars, the stars that make up our galaxy, all blurred together by distance. So that just like when you crest the trail and you reach the top of a ridge by day and you see your universe suddenly expand from just the few feet around you to suddenly the miles all the way to the distant horizon. Well, when you see that Milky Way at night, your world stretches from not just mere miles, but to millions of light years. And it becomes something that allows you to become part of a larger universe, both a universe of space, but a universe of time. Every generation of human beings, up until really only 100 years ago, had that view of a starry Milky Way sky every night of the year. Because of the scenic trails, we go to them in order to experience a natural world by day. And because of those protections, we get to experience that natural world at night as well. Now, a park ranger friend once told me that the sky begins at your feet. And I know that's true, because I feel when it's gone too long for me to be able to see a natural sky, my feet take me out onto the trail, and I know that on a clear, cloudless evening in summer, I will get to be a part of the universe once more.
Hey guys, it's Darwin, here today to wish the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail a happy 50th anniversary. Wow, 50 years of the National Scenic Trails. You know, without trails like the Appalachian Trail, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. The AT changed me, it renamed me, and it opened my eyes to the natural beauties that can be found on our National Scenic Trails. Recently, the PCT completely challenged me in ways that I've never been challenged before, and both trails have given me a ton of memories and experiences that I'll never forget. Without the National Scenic Trails, you and I wouldn't be able to access our natural world as easily, and we wouldn't get to meet each other and have those experiences together. Some of the greatest relationships I've ever had with anyone else I found on the AT and on the PCT. Not only have the National Scenic Trails completely changed my life, but it is amazing to think about how many lives it's changed over the last 50 years. So again, happy 50th anniversary to the AT and the PCT, and thank you for everything that you've given us. Hike on.
I've been walking the Lewis and Clark Trail since I left the Pacific Ocean on May 3rd, and it is now September 26th, and I'm hoping to complete the Lewis and Clark Trail on October 2nd, which is hopefully this video will show on Facebook. And I just want to, grateful to have the opportunity to say a few words about my appreciation of the National Scenic Trails. I've had the good fortune to have walked all of them, and I'm a photographer, and what always kind of drives me and motivates me is exploring new environments and photographing new environments. And what I love about the National Scenic Trails, why I'm so grateful that they were my photographic muse, so to speak, is that each one is so different and unique. And then obviously the Appalachian Trail, which is the granddaddy of them all, with the amazing hardwood forests and the trail community. And the Pacific Crest Trail has so much variety. That was the first trail that I ever started, and it actually started this whole thing off when I was a child. And on the Pacific Crest Trail, when I was a youngster, our scout troop crossed the Pacific Crest Trail in the North Cascades, and the scoutmaster said, you know, if you walk all the way down that trail, you can get all the way to Mexico. And we just, everybody kind of looks at each other, what? And it just planted a seed in my head, and many years later started the Pacific Crest Trail, which led to the Appalachian Trail and onward. The National Scenic Trail System has just allowed me to really explore America, and I'm just so grateful that in October 2nd, 1968, our Congress had the foresight to create the National Trails Act with just 2 trails, the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail. It's now grown into 11 National Scenic Trails. Maybe on the 100th anniversary, there'll be some more National Scenic Trails. And thank you to Lyndon Johnson and to the Congress, which was it was a bipartisan effort. Shows what can be done with bipartisan Congress. And thank you to all the volunteers that do all the work on the National Scenic Trails. Just so blessed to have experienced our amazing National Scenic Trail System. And on this day, October 2nd of 2018, onward, ho, and congratulations to the National Scenic Trails.
Individuals experienced with our long trails live from the Pacific Crest Trail Association headquarters. So we're going to send it over to you guys, PCT.
Hi, my name is Danielle, and my trail name is Giggles, and I hiked the PCT in 2017. So that's kind of my first through hike. And then since then, I've been able to hike the Southern Sierra High Route to the Sierra High Route, and then just after this, I'm going to be hiking lowest to highest as well. And then what I do personally is I have now started a one-woman show company where I teach outdoor skills. So I offer thru-hike coaching, wilderness first aid classes, and backpacking basic skills too.
I didn't realize I got to ask you questions, but I'm so thrilled to get to connect to you. And I'm wondering, when you're talking to people who have never set foot on the trail before, what's the most important thing they need to know before they go out there?
So there's a few things. I think that it's really important that everyone feel like they can get outside, but also that they take the time to kind of catalog what their skills are and where they need to grow to be able to be successful and be safe outside, and also as part of the trail community. The more that you know, the more you can help other people know. So that's super, super important. But then also, once you do have those skills, I think it's really important to have the confidence to go for it. Like for instance, walking across the street. We all know how to do that. You look left, you look right, and then you go. There's always some danger, but when you know how to do it, that's when you should just go for it.
So what do you think the important steps are if someone wants to maybe take their first week-long backpacking trip, or even if they want to thru-hike for 6 months on the Pacific Crest Trail or Appalachian Trail? like, how should they prepare? Should it be more mental or physical? How much do they need to worry about gear? What should they do to get ready?
So that depends a lot on your kind of baseline. So if you're someone that has never hiked before, definitely going out and doing a day hike would be really, really helpful, just so that you get your body used to it, your mind used to it, you kind of know what it's all about. And then gear-wise, it also kind of depends what type of experience you're supposed to have. So my background was guiding on the East Coast, actually, in New England, and I was guiding kids who had never ever been outside before. And we did what's like standard backpacking or traditional backpacking. And so our gear was not ultralight, but it did meet the needs of what we were doing, and that was fine, and it was safe, and it was fun. If you're trying to go a long distance, I really do think it's important to take the time to get to know your gear and really what it weighs and what it means to you, and kind of start to pare down a little bit. But I do think mental game is huge. Knowing why you're doing it is important. And then I also think that first aid is a good thing to know, and how to deal with various emergencies. Get to know the climate, the temperatures, the weather, what type of terrain you're going to be on, and really kind of analyze, are you prepared for those things? And if not, how do you do that?
Cool. Well, you've given us so many good tips for like holistic prepping for the trail. I'm also curious, like for beginner hikers, backpackers, how important is it for them to understand and know about Leave No Trace before starting out? And what can we do as sort of veteran or experienced hikers or backpackers to help spread that message?
Yeah, so this is a big question. Leave No Trace is hugely important to preserving the places where we play. And when you're out there, you have, I think, the best chance to make an impact, whether you are just learning or whether you know Leave No Trace really, really well. This is the time to show kind of what you know, and also try and learn from other people around you. If you see someone doing something you've never done before, like packing out their trash or their toilet paper, things like that, like ask about it. Or maybe someone's not burying their feces in a certain area. Ask about that. Why? Maybe there's a reason, and try and learn from that. And asking about it can also highlight things for other people. I think it's really hard as people that are diehard Leave No Trace people to try and be approachable about it and not offend people, because you don't want to anger someone and have them not learn. So it's kind of finding that balance, but I think that Leave No Trace is our responsibility as hikers to continue to have places that we love all the time.
Yeah, I really appreciate your response, and I sort of echo your feelings of wanting to be kind when you're relaying these important trail manners or etiquette. Another question I have for you is that you have, so much knowledge and information, and you're sharing that as a teacher and an experienced backpacker, but I'm sure you're also still learning. So what are backcountry skills or things that you still want to increase your knowledge about, even though you're teaching others?
Yeah, so my big one, and I'm super open about this, I say, like, ask me everything, but don't ask me about food. I eat horribly. I am the one that gets my food at a gas station. I eat tons of candy, which I'm not saying is bad totally, but like needs to be modulated. So this is my big project, and I've been trying to find some mentors and some people in this area to kind of help me out. And I actually just met a total non-hiker who's obsessed with freeze drying, and he's been teaching me a ton about foods and freeze drying. And he has 2 5-year-old twins, and he's hoping to start getting them out camping. So it's been a really, really rich experience, and I'm really hoping to kind of grow and maybe become healthier about my foods. But that's definitely a huge one. And then the other is like really learning to believe in yourself. Like, I think I do believe in myself, but it's always a huge struggle. Like, throughout this industry, you'll find people that will cut you down. Know what you know and base your decisions off of that, not what someone else judges you for. Like, that is really crucial and a battle that I constantly face.
Awesome. Well, Danielle, I'm so grateful that you would share some quick tips with us, and I also hope that people check you out and consider learning more from you and all that you offer. And once you figure out that food on the trail thing, I want you to teach me, because I've been doing this forever, and I'm still like, Snickers are easy and delicious, and that might be my meal plan. So Thank you for being with us today, and I want to introduce now someone else who I believe is at the Pacific Crest Trail Association, who works for the BLM, or Bureau of Land Management, and that is Mike Santitos. So Mike, welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my agency, the Bureau of Land Management, manages a lot of public land in the western United States, of which about 230 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail go across. We've got a great partnership with PCTA, with Forest Service, but I actually didn't want to talk about work. I just wanted to give a quick little story that I just love, which is a wedding that I went to just a couple months ago. The bride and groom told their story about how they met and how they decided relatively early in their relationship that they wanted to hike the PCT together. So they did 2 years ago, and for months they spent every day and every night together. And they talked about how that experience of being together in such close quarters just taught them so much about themselves and about each other, and really kind of gave them the confidence that, yeah, you know, we really do want to live our lives together. And so at mile 2000 of their hike, they got engaged. And I just love that story. And I think that story, as well as many of others that we've heard today, just show that the experience of being on the trail can really, it really literally changes people's lives. And that's why the PCT still exists today, 50 years later. It's not because, you know, a law was signed, which, you know, don't get me wrong, was visionary, was very important. But the real reason that the trail exists today is because there are so many people that care so deeply about it. And so that when, you know, a tree falls on the trail, or a storm washes it out, or fires burn it over, or, you know, maybe society kind of starts to forget why the trail is important and meaningful, that all of those people, many of which are hopefully watching today, are there to step up and do what it takes to keep the trail going and to make sure that it endures. So today we're celebrating the trail, and we're celebrating all of the things that it's given to us, but I also just want to make sure that we celebrate everything that all of you have given to the trail over the years. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to, you know, the hikers, the equestrians, the volunteers, agency folks, the professional staff at PCTA. You all do so much for the trail, so I just want to say thank you for everything you have done and everything I know you're going to continue to do over the coming 50 years. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And we definitely want to thank you too. And, you know, I love that story you shared about the trail, because we've talked so much already about these trails being life-changing as far as a journey, but there's also so many life-changing moments that happen out there. And I know I was hiking on the Appalachian Trail at a place called Max Patch earlier this summer, and I saw a couple get proposed, or who became proposed on top of the mountain, and I was so excited. It was so beautiful, and I ran over and asked if I could take pictures, because they of course wanted to document it, I think. So I got to take pictures of them, and it's just to your point, it's so many people have such defining moments on these trails, whether it's just going out for one day or hiking it for 6 months. And of course, just what you said, you know, we owe these trails to the volunteers and the huge community that works so hard and tirelessly. And just like we said earlier in this program, they are the soul of the trail. And so now it's our opportunity to recognize some of our volunteers. We have a few videos we want to share with you. The first is going to come from Mo Lemire, who's a trail maintainer near Bear Mountain, New York. And he's going to talk to you about a project that has been years and years and years in the making, but he'll show you the last completed section of the Bear Mountain Trail project. And also we'll hear from the PCT, Lee Turkelson, who is a longtime volunteer, and it's going to tell us a little bit more about the history and legacy of volunteerism out there.
Howdy folks, Storm here. I am your Appalachian Trail Chair for Orange and Rockland counties here in New York State. It is September 27th at 9:30 in the morning, and I'm on top of Bear Mountain. Today marks the end of a 15-year project. So if you see behind me, this is the top of Bear Mountain, and this is the last piece of the Appalachian Trail that is being completed today about 10:30 in the morning. It's been a 15-year project. basically done by volunteers. And most of the Appalachian Trail, all the way from Georgia to Maine, is maintained by volunteers like myself. After my thru-hike in 2016, I had such a fantastic experience. I was like, it needs to be preserved. And so that is why I am here as your volunteer chair, doing everything in my power to help preserve the experience for the next generation. So the Appalachian Trail, there's 31 maintaining clubs that go all the way from the Maine to Georgia, or Georgia to Maine, however you want to. For SOBOs, I know it's Maine to Georgia, and for NOBOs, it's Georgia to Maine. But I highly recommend getting involved and helping protect this experience for the next generation. And as you can see, Bear Mountain, this is going to be a 100-year trail. It should last 100 years with very, very, very little maintenance. And yeah, it's pretty spectacular. I set a few of these stone steps. They weigh about 1,200 pounds, and they're moved by hand with rock bars and some rope. It's pretty cool to set a stone step to say that's going to be there for 100 years. So it's kind of cool that we were able to finish this project a couple days before the 50th anniversary of the National Scenic Trails Act, marking the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail as the National Scenic Trails. So I know many folks don't necessarily live next to the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, but I highly encourage you to get involved in any local trail close to you because it's a very rewarding experience. And for those of you that thru-hiked, it's exactly what you would need. For me, it's been great to stay connected post-hike. And on my trailversary, as we call it, I went down to the Appalachian Trail and did some trail work on the boundary. So get involved, find out. Join one of your local clubs, 31 of us. I'm with the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference here in New York State, the Appalachian Mountain Club in New England, Potomac Club. I mean, there's so many of us out here, and we need your help. The trail, she needs your help. So get involved. Cheers.
This video that contains scenes along the Pacific Crest Trail is kind of fuzzy, and some of the colors have faded. Well, that's because it is from old VHS tapes that have sat around for more than 25 years. But I figured it was a lot better to look at these scenes than at me. I was asked to record a short video about volunteering since I have volunteered with the PCTA at a variety of capacities for the last 25 years. I became a member of the organization more than 50 years ago when I wrote a letter to PCT pioneer Warren Rogers, and he sent me the first edition of the Communicator. Little did I know that 30 years later I would find myself as a volunteer editor of that publication. I was in high school when the National Trails Act was passed in Congress, and I recall it was pretty big news. When he proposed the act, President Johnson noted that it would take a vast system of volunteers to promote, preserve, and maintain the trails. The PCTA has certainly met that challenge. I became a volunteer like so many others because of my experiences along the trail. But I was also inspired by other volunteers, including Alice Creeper. Alice put out a call 25 years ago for volunteers to help maintain the trail in Southern California. Her dedication to organizing volunteer trail crews was so significant that the PCTA established the Alice Creeper Award. It is given annually to the organization's top trail maintenance volunteer.
If you're interested in trying, I'm very happy to have you come. I feel that everybody can contribute what they can, and every little bit helps. If they can come out and they're willing to do some, and we get enough people out here, we still get a lot done. So I think I'm pretty tolerant about that. I feel that, hey, what contribution people can do, that's the best thing in the world. And sometimes these people turn out and they find out, gosh, I didn't think I could do this. And they did, and so they keep coming back. And so I guess that's my ulterior motive, saying, well, boy, they're going to come back and do some more trail work.
Following Alice's untimely death, Pete Fish, who volunteered with Alice on many crews, took up the cause. and organized the work parties that would later become known as the Trail Guerrillas. He also said he was inspired by others.
It's the nifty guys out here. I mean, you've got all these people out here working like 60, and you come out here and you feel, if you're a little bit wimpy or you're not putting in your full day's work, I really feel I'm letting a lot of good people down. And it's great. I think this is one of the best things I've ever discovered. Hiking the trail was a lot of fun, but I've had an equal amount of fun, since just getting involved and getting out here.
Trail crew opportunities exist the entire length of the trail. By the way, this video contains excerpts from a program produced 23 years ago to invite others into the PCTA when there were just a couple of hundred members. You can watch the entire program on YouTube by searching for PCTA Volunteers 1995. More modern videos about PCTA volunteers are also on YouTube. Working on the trail is not the only way to volunteer. You can contact the PCTA for other opportunities as well. Even sending in a membership contribution is a voluntary act that shows your support of the trail. And remember the words of John Muir, who noted what will happen to those who volunteer to help preserve wild places.
For every acre that you gain, 10,000 trees and flowers, all the other forest people, and the usual unborn generations will rise up and call you blessed.
One of the things I love about these trails is just the serendipity and how people meet. And we are doing this live event today from the Appalachian Trail at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy headquarters in Harpers Ferry. And we had a southbound thru-hiker just kind of wander in today. So this is Yellow Jacket.
Hi.
And she started the trail just a few months ago and is well on her way to finishing in Georgia. And our next segment actually talks about the importance of getting youth and young people involved in these trails and in conservation. So, Yellow Jacket, very quickly, you just graduated from college, right?
Yes.
Why do you think the trails are important for people at this season of life?
Oh, because, I mean, you make so many connections. Everybody that I've come across, I mean, you get their phone numbers and they want to stay in touch with you. And it's just like, it's such a monumental thing to set out on after I just graduated that, I mean, it's filled me with so much joy and excitement and just an excitement for moving forward in life. And so I'm really happy that I got to do it. And also I met the president of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, and now, you know, we were talking about all kinds of involvement and getting youth more involved and advocating for the trail itself. So that was really amazing. And also meeting you. That was really amazing too. So
I quickly want to point out, she smells, I know you can't smell her, and usually that's a good thing. She smells amazing for a thru-hiker. I'm really impressed by that. But also one thing I want to encourage you to do is after your hike's over, the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and Pacific Crest Trail Association are really trying to bring in youth advocates. And at this point, you're going to see a video series that highlights some of those programs. You'll see a video put together by the Next Gen Council of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, which is something you might be able to join to stay involved with the trail. There's also a special video by Kayla Carter, who's a part of that. And then there's a group of high school students that go to an environmental charter school out west, and they're going to talk about their experiences with the trail as well.
Kristen Murphy.
And I'm Dakota Jackson. And I'm Marcella Maldonado.
And we're part of ATC's Next Gen. We're out here for National Public Lands Day doing campsite remediation on the AT.
And we're encouraging everyone to volunteer and find out about their local Appalachian Trail Maintenance chapter. Happy 50-year anniversary!
Woo! We're out here celebrating the 50th anniversary of the National Trail System and helping to bring other volunteers outside and get to know their own backyard. public lands help crafted the character and legacy of this country, and will continue to for generations to come with these good efforts.
And we want you out here too to help us on the trip.
Hi, my name is Michaela Williams. I am a member of the Next Generation Advisory Council, and I'm also a member of the Georgia Appalachian Trail Club. I'm super excited to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the National Trail System, and I think it'll be a good time because I'm somebody that did not know about the outdoors or hiking before joining these organizations, but I'd like to see more people like myself hiking and having a good time.
Happy 50th anniversary, National Trail Systems Act. We love you.
I take care of the Appalachian Trail because when I was younger, I hiked on the trail and it really helped me find what I wanted to do, and it gave me a really strong connection to not only the land around me, but an amazing community of people, and so I want everyone else to have that same opportunity. So that's how I take care of it, and so should you.
Long distance trails should be protected because they're a shared space that connect communities across the nation.
Hey Internet, welcome to the Unaka Mountain Wilderness.
And what we're doing is we're clearing a trail that has grown over, it's a horseshoe trail, and we're out here clearing it to open up the corridor for folks. Stamping Ground Ridge Trail, number 110. And up until 1954, this used to be the Appalachian Trail running through this area. It got rerouted in 1954 to where it's going over on the other side of the road from where we're at now. And it's within the Unaka Mountain Range. 10.8 miles of the Appalachian Trail runs through here.
So we are out here celebrating National Public Lands Day, but also we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the National Scenic Trails Act. Really want to encourage everyone to get out into the woods, give back, and be a part of contributing to your public lands.
Hello, my name is Kiana Kinsey and I'm a senior from Environmental Charter High School.
Hi, I'm Laura Lindquist, a senior at Environmental Charter High School.
Hi, my name is Sari Alvarez, and I would like to wish the PCT a happy 50th anniversary.
Trails are important to our society because it provides a space for all people to enjoy the wilderness and to get away from all the light, noise, and air pollution.
It is astounding to me that almost 3 of my lifetimes ago, people like me created these trails and sustained them so that I can now experience them.
I would also like to thank them for giving kids like me in urban cities the chance to experience different things and going out in nature and connecting with what is the earth and American lands.
Growing up where I did with factories and freeways surrounding me polluting, going to these trails was one of the first time I inhaled fresh air, heard silence, and saw my first shooting star.
I am so glad these trails exist for youth and adults alike to go and experience the life-changing beauty they contain.
Happy 50th anniversary!
Thank you, and happy 50th anniversary.
So thank you, and congratulations.
Man, I loved watching those videos. They were super powerful and definitely spoke to me. And it's interesting, one question I get a lot is, and I asked it to Cheryl Strayed today, but do you want your kids to be hikers? And I usually say that I'd love for them to enjoy the outdoors and hiking, but way more important to me is that they're conservationists, because that's going to matter more to them and their children long term than whether they ever walk a long distance trail. And it really does with these paths. I mean, it takes so much more than an individual or a village or a community. It really takes a country to make these paths what they are, everything from the federal level on down. And now we're going to hear a few more of our team members and agency partners talk about the importance of involvement and volunteering on these trails.
Hi everybody, Ron Creeper here at mile marker 266 on the Pacific Crest Trail on Big Bear Lake, California. Wishing everybody, including these 2 scenic national trails, the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, a happy 50th anniversary. What a great time, great legacy that this is all about. Standing beside me are 2 banners that were used 25 years ago when the Golden Spike ceremony was completed near Agua Dulce. that shows that this legacy and this trail is so important. If it's endured another 25 years, it's going to go on for many, many more years for many future generations to enjoy. Trails are important. They allow people to connect to nature. They allow people to get grounded again, kind of reflect, find out what they are doing in this world. Our roots are here in nature, and trails provide that pathway. For me, the Pacific Crest Trail opened up a huge world of opportunity. I worked as a park ranger. I'm now retired. My mother, Alice Creeper, was very involved with the Pacific Crest Trail, and in support of her and her efforts, I take pride in wishing everybody happy anniversary, Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Cindy Adams Dunn, the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I'm here today to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the National Trail Systems Act. And I'm at the center point of the Appalachian Trail, which happens to be in Michaud State Forest in Pennsylvania. The neat thing about this place is that a person could hike 1,100 miles that way to Mount Katahdin, or 1,100 miles that way to Springer Mountain, Georgia. But here in Pennsylvania, the Appalachian Trail traverses many parks and forests and some of our lovely landscapes like the South Mountain and the Kittatinny Ridge. So we welcome you to enjoy your celebration of the 50th anniversary of the National Trail Systems Act on the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
We can take care of that next week. Oh, hey everybody. Hi, I'm Chris Borrell. I'm the Director for Recreation, Wilderness, Heritage, and Volunteer Programs here in the Southern Region in Atlanta. Deb wanted me to say how excited we are about the 50th anniversary of the National Trails Act. Here in the Southern Region, we experience visits from roughly 110 million people within a 4-hour drive of any national forest land. We are also stewards to 5 national scenic and historic trails: the El Camino Real de las Tejas Trail in Texas, the Over Mountain Victory Trail in Tennessee and North Carolina, the Trail of Tears, North Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, the Florida Trail, which obviously is in Florida, and also the Appalachian Scenic Trail in Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia. Now the AT in the Southern Region, we manage and steward about 700 miles of the AT, and over the past 4 decades, we've had a really great shared stewardship model partnership with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, the Park Service, and the Forest Service. One message, though, here in the Southern Region that we want to make sure people really remember of all things is that the journey of the Appalachian Trail begins in North Georgia on the Chattahoochee-Oconee National Forest. Happy birthday, Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail.
Hi, my name is Steve Queen, and my trail name is OG. I hiked the PCT in 1981 and then again in 2016. I'm also the founder of the Mount Hood chapter of the Pacific Crest Trail Association. My love affair with the PCT began in 1971 at the lip of the Zigzag River Canyon. I was told that in that direction I could walk all the way to Canada, and in that direction I could walk all the way to Mexico. I was also told that just a few months before that, Eric Ryback had been the first person to hike the whole trail. The mind of a 9-year-old completely blown. My through hike in 1981 was the culmination of a young life dreaming of this amazing concept, a border-to-border trail. That hike turned out to be the most profound, moving, personal experience of my life. So when I moved back to the Pacific Northwest to start a family, I figured some payback was in order. In November of 1993, the Mount Hood chapter of the PCTA was born in my living room with Lesia Strayed, Joris Naiman, Roger Carpenter, Del Zander, Bryce Hammock, and Jill Wilson. Lesia and Joris are no longer with us, but their contributions are felt even today. That permit that thru-hikers get every year, that program was started in the late 90s as a passion project by Lesia Strayed. As the Pacific Crest Trail celebrates its 50th year, our chapter celebrates its 25th. For 25 years, I've had the privilege of working with a phenomenal group of volunteers. Their dedication and good-humored humanity have helped grow our chapter into a champion for our beloved trail. As the PCTA's volunteer efforts mature, I am looking forward to the next 25 years. So happy birthday to the National Trail System Act. The importance of your promise grows with each passing year.
Awesome. Okay, well, after that quick breather, we have now entered the last hour of our 4-hour live stream event. And if you haven't already done so, now would be a great time to visit atpct50.org. Check out that website, go to the auction, and I will say the good news about the auction is, and if you're one of those kind of strategic bidders, it's actually going to stay open even after the end of our live stream event. It will close on the East Coast or Appalachian Trail at midnight. No, that's not right. 9 p.m. Midnight. 9 p.m. on the West Coast. Sorry, time zones. But it will be open a little bit after our live stream ends. So just know that. And also, again, you can make a donation, and all funds generated, regardless of whether you're on the West Coast or East Coast, everything is split equally between the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and the Pacific Crest Trail Association. You know, today has been a really special day for me personally because time and time again, I just hear these stories of impact and transformation and giving. And I think that is so much the story of these trails. And I know, you know, personally, I didn't grow up hiking or backpacking, but I decided at the age of 21, sort of like Yellow Jacket, the thru-hiker that was just in here, that I really wanted to spend time outdoors. And I wanted to get to know nature and get to know who I was and what my strengths were. So I set out on a 5-month hike on the Appalachian Trail. And I definitely went into it sort of overconfident and cocky, like a lot of 21-year-olds. And I think I overestimated myself and I underestimated the trail. And I got it handed to me. Like, my butt was so kicked at the end of that 5-month journey. And I was humbled and I was broken, but in such a good way. Such a good way. I guess, I mean, you know, I was grounded in more ways than one. And the trail really, for me, changed my values. One of the things I think is so important about these national scenic trails are they have a countercultural message. You know, my values changed. I redefined what success looked like. I learned the importance of simplicity. I realized I could be content with just the items I carried in a pack on my back. And yes, that sounds totally Spartan, but honestly, it's liberating. When you realize you don't need things to make you happy, then you can invest in adventures and experiences and relationships. And the relationships on the trail also taught me a lot. You know, I expected to learn about nature and from nature, and I did, and there was a lot of self-discovery, but man, like, everyone I met out there taught me something. And I was also forced to face a lot of my own stereotypes and judgments, because without realizing it, I had grown up in a social or cultural bubble like most of us, and I thought different people from different places were going to be a certain way, and then I started talking to them. And I love that the trail is just this level playing field. Like there's no hierarchy, there's no boss. You don't know what car people drive. You just get to know them for who they are. And in doing so, you realize that every person can teach you something. Every person knows something that you don't know out there. And you get to know each other so well, so quickly, because you don't have the same distractions and stimulations that you have when you're off trail. And the quality of relationship out there is just unparalleled. And then the other thing that surprised me, it was something that, Cheryl Strayed mentioned earlier today, solitude. Solitude is awesome. Like, I was so paranoid starting out that I was going to go out there for 5 months and be bored and lonely. And I remember the first day of the hike, like 3 weeks in, and I had been by myself all day, and I had thought through all these thoughts, and I think I sang a couple songs out loud very poorly, and then there's nothing to do, and I was bored. And the more I sat with that and the more I got comfortable with it, the more I realized this is awesome. I think now what I experienced wasn't really boredom, it was just peace. The trail is the first time in my life where I really feel like I experienced peace. But the thing I miss the most is strange. You want to think about this for a hiker, but the thing I miss the most when it was done, so I finished the trail that first time, and I got off and I got a job, and that made my mom incredibly happy. But I missed how beautiful I felt when I was hiking. And that does not make sense. And I did not look like an REI model out there. I was dirty, I was filthy, I smelled horrible. I had scrapes and cuts and bug bites and bruises, but for 5 months I didn't carry a mirror. And I know this dates me, but it was also before the age of the selfie. So I wasn't taking digital pictures of myself. I actually carried those wind-up disposable cameras, which I don't even know if they make those anymore. But the point is, I didn't see myself. And I also didn't have, magazines or commercials telling me what I should look like. And I didn't realize, I think, how much that impacted me until I could step away from it. And then for 5 months, I got to see myself through my interactions with other hikers. So if I was kind, or if I was funny, if I could make someone else smile, that was my reflection. That made me feel pretty. And growing up, I will say, I always thought nature was beautiful, and I think most people would agree. But for me, it was usually looking out a window. And I had never seen myself as a part of nature. And I had never seen myself as a part of all that beauty until I hiked. And then after coming over 2,000 miles and hiking through 14 states, you better believe that I based my self-worth a whole lot less on how I looked and a whole lot more on what I could do. And that's impacted everything since then. If I had never set foot on the trail, I know I would have never had the courage to share my stories as a speaker or a writer. I know I never would have tried to start my own company to get other people outdoors. I really don't think I would be as good of a wife or mother. And, admittedly, I still need to work on those things, but the trail made me better at relationships, and it filled me with gratitude. One of the reasons I knew I needed to go back and do another trail is because one morning I stepped in a shower and I didn't think, oh my gosh, this is the most incredible miracle to have hot water coming out of the faucet. Like, that is, we take so much for granted, and the trails just instill this sense of gratitude and community, and they take away a sense of entitlement. And now, I don't have as much time to hike because I'm a busy working mom, but I love it just as much. And I think the good thing is that my journey as a hiker has been one that, I started walking, and now I spend a lot of time focused on conservation. And I hope that regardless of which National Scenic Trail you hike or how far you go, that that's the journey, that it starts with hiking and it leads towards conservation. Because the truth is, you know, people don't protect what they don't value, and they don't value what they don't experience. And that's why these trails are important. We need to give this experience to everyone we can so that they'll want to protect it. And at this point, again, if you can, go online and consider making a donation that's going to support these trails, or at least bidding on some awesome auction items. But I want to bring in two people who can speak more to the importance of volunteerism, because they've been doing it for a really, really long time. And I also want to say I've been able to log a lot of miles. Got over 14,000 miles under my belt. That's a lot on my knees. And I always say, if my knees give out, I'm getting a horse. And you can't ride a horse on the Appalachian Trail, but you can on the Pacific Crest Trail. And our next two volunteers are not only dedicated volunteers on the Pacific Crest Trail, they're also highly skilled equestrians. So I'm going to be interested to hear what they have to say. And the first one we're going to bring on is Ralph Looney. So Ralph, welcome to our webcast.
Thank you. I have ridden the Pacific Crest Trail down through the years by horseback. And I first learned about the trail when I was in the 7th grade, and it has just stuck with me through all my life, and it's in my DNA, I think. And I appreciate that trail open to people and to enjoy God's creation and the beautiful scenery and whatnot.
Now, I always thought it would be more difficult on horseback than hiking. Do you agree?
Yes, I think you're probably right. You've got to worry about feed for the horses grazing, pack grain, and look up for water. But you're up there on that horse looking, you know, the scenery and around and everything. And it's a lot more enjoyable than watching that trail down, sprain your ankle or something like that.
What do you think is the horse's experience on the Pacific Crest Trail? Do you get a sense that your animal really enjoys it and feel like they enjoy being in a natural setting and on a trail?
Yes, yeah. You don't have any trouble with your horses out there as far as being afraid. Bears have come into camp right close to them in Sequoia National Forest, and they kind of look after themselves, and they're kind of in a pen at home, and here they're out in the open, and they enjoy that grass. There's a lot of that grass that is really good for them.
What is one of your favorite memories of horseback riding on the Pacific Crest Trail?
Well, probably 1952, when my father finally relented and took me up on the summit in White Pass in the state of Washington. And we spent 13 days out there with the horses and really had a great time. You know, that sticks in the family memory.
I have to say, I love that your favorite memory is from 1952. You know that's a good memory when it's lasted that long and set that foundation. And, you know, what do you think, what would you say, you've had such a lifelong relationship with the trail. So what would you say is important for people to realize or to do to protect these trails moving forward?
Well, get involved, one thing, and join the PCTA Association and work with the National Forest. They own the land, the trail, and get out and use it. And I think that's increasing, and we need to push the use of that trail. And I'm standing here in the Goat Rocks behind me, and I've been there a number of times, and that does something for me.
I'm so glad you told me that was the Goat Rocks. I had no clue because I hiked through there in a terrible storm and I didn't see any of it. So now I know what it looks like. So I'm interested, do you still get out on the trail on your horse?
Yes, I'm still riding. I'm 84 and good health, and still riding my horse. My one horse is 27 years old, the older than I am, and that's kind of slowed me down a little bit. But I've run the chainsaw and maintained the trail for 25 years out of the Feather River Canyon, Belden, up to almost to Lassen National Park. And at first couple of years that my backcountry horseman Sutter Buttes unit did that, I thought, no, I don't want to do that. The Forest Service should be doing that, you know. But I went once, and man, I don't think I've missed a trip since. And just the builds up the body and the mind.
Now, and just to make sure I understand, when you do the trail maintenance, you do it with your horse, right?
Yes, right. I have been around horses, and I rode my granddad's work horses when he had a dairy, and I've never stopped.
Well, we hope you never do. And we're so glad you're here today. And now, I think you have another equestrian friend and volunteer there, Bill Roberts, who's also known as the Cowboy Poet. Is he around?
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi there.
Hey, Bill, welcome. Do you have a poem you'd like to share with us?
I do, Jennifer. It's right here. I just wrote it, so I'm going to have to read it instead of memorize. Usually I memorize it and I just say it. But anyway, when Scott asked me about a poem, I sat down and I kind of created, I call it the Pacific Crest Trail Pioneers. It talks about the early guys that got the thing going. And it goes like this. It started as a vision in the minds of just a few, but over time it came alive and blossomed, then it grew. He was horseback herding cows on the valley floor. As he gazed upon the distant peaks, he wanted to see more. Theodore Solomons, just 13, saw the White Sierra Range. The mountain tops called out to him. And though it may seem strange, it became his mission to walk past every hill and dale, near lakes and trees and meadowlands along a mountain trail. He made 3 trips between 1892 and 95 and blazed a trail through the mountains. It was good to be alive. On his first trip, he took Whitney, his camera packing mule, to photograph the scenery where every lake's a jewel. He made notes and maps and photographs of everything he saw, naming peaks and lakes and valleys. Beautiful, he was in awe. He found a route and laid it out. His report had said it all. He'd poured his heart and soul into it every spring, summer, and fall. The state got behind the plan. The money gods were kind. John Muir had passed. They named it fast for the man with the mountain mind. 54 years from seeing those peaks shining in the sun, the vision of a 13-year-old, the John Muir Trail, was done. But that was just the start. There were other peaks and streams on the Pacific Mountain Trail in other people's dreams. Working for the U.S. Forest Service, Fred Cleater had begun an influential career in Oregon and Washington. A diamond shape to mark the route, 500 signs were made. The Oregon Skyline Trail would rise 270 miles of the Oregon Cascades. To cut a road upon the crest through beauty and wilderness so rare, they felt would be a sacrilege, a thought they couldn't bear. You can see those signs today from Mount Hood to Crater Lake and be thankful for a meandering trail winding slowly like a snake. Thanks to Cleater and his crew and their loyal pack train, continued on through Washington, the Cascade Crest we did gain, the Washington Cascade Crest. While up in Bellingham, Washington in 1926, it keeps going. Catherine Montgomery's love of tramping the PCT she did predict, promoted by the mountain clubs of the Pacific Northwest to mimic the Appalachian. Thank you. I get it from both sides, both ways. But thank you. Appalachian Trail at Catherine's behest, saying a high winding trail of our western mountains will go from the border with Canada down below to Mexico. The father of the PCT is how he came to be known. He came to California to start a life of his own. Clinton C. Clark had lots of energy and maybe a buck or two. He joined the Sierra Club and became part of the crew. He met the lofty mountain range on the Sierra Club trips, was active in the Boy Scouts, and took photographic pics. He proposed to the National Park and Forest Service the idea of a trail from Canada to Mexico. With his drive, it couldn't fail. The project was approved. They wanted him to run the show, so he got out his trusty typewriter, and then they watched him go. He hand-typed 1,000 letters to those he thought might care, compiled maps and information that were sent from everywhere. But there were no funds that came along. The Great Depression was in force. There was nothing else to do, so he paid for it, of course. The Sierra Club got involved to get the PCT conference going, and the idea of a relay got the interest flowing. Warren Rogers from the YMCA was the conference secretary, but when the relay bogged down, he did just what was necessary. He became the trusty guide to get the logbook through. For 4 summers and 40 teams, that's what he would do. I met Warren Rogers in 1971 at the cafe here in Syed. My work had just begun. A tall and friendly man, enthusiastic, I would say, and passionate about the trail. I felt the same way. He talked about the relay and the YMCA boys, how he helped the lads along, the hardships and the joys. The Pacific Crest Trail Conference was the organization of the day, also the predecessor of our current PCTA. He spoke of how the trail was pieced together from the other trails around, where the Cascade Crest, Skyline, and the John Muir trails were found. I started building trails and bridges, blasting rock along the way, packing mules and horses, until my hair finally turned gray. He was the spark plug that kept the trail alive, inspiring countless young men to join him with his drive. I'm so glad Warren Rogers came to town that day. I felt lucky that he touched my life, and I still feel that way today. Thank you. Woo. Okay. And I'm still here, and she's still there.
You're still here. Yeah, I want to thank you for that. That was incredible. I'm impressed with all the history that you packed into that. And I was just giving you a hard time. You can say Appalachian or Appalachian.
No, it's good because
use whatever works best for your rhyme, okay?
Yeah,
use whatever works best in the poem. They're both correct. And I also, before you hop off, I think we have a mutual friend. I know Scott Williamson, and I think he mentioned that on one of his hikes you had gotten thrown from a horse. And he said, Bill's the best guy. I mean, I had to stop and help him and make sure he was okay. And, you know, he has a lot of respect for you. And I know he was glad he could be there to help you. And I'm sure you would do the same for him. So I just wanted to make that connection.
Yeah, I was very glad. I met him numerous times over the years. And I remember that time, I think he left the 5th of August from Canada. And he was on the top of the Siskiyous on the 31st when I got dumped. And then he helped me get into the, get to the hospital and everything. Delayed him a little bit, but he made it up, Scott. Anyway, great guy. I haven't seen him for a while, but good.
It is, and that's certainly the spirit of the trail, is helping anyone in need. So thank you again for sharing all your knowledge and history with us today. And now we're going to send it back to the East Coast for a little Smoky Mountain video, and then we're going to go back west. I love this time travel. And hear from another one of my friends and inspirations, a female who's an awesome hiker, Shantae Salabert. So we'll take it away with those 2 videos. Thanks again, Bill.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary, Appalachian National Scenic Trail. Happy anniversary to you.
Hi, my name is Shantae Salabert, trail name Rustic. I want to wish the PCT and the AT a happy 50th anniversary, or 50th birthday. The PCT has been sort of especially instrumental in my life over the past few years. I'm phoning in here from Southern California, and I've lived here for 12 years. To me, a trail, any trail, is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to go out there and have a spiritual connection, if that's what you're looking for. It's an opportunity to go out and connect with the ancestors, if that's what you want. It's an opportunity to get out and sweat and work out and feel good about your body. It's an opportunity to go be with your thoughts. And it's an opportunity to just get out and move in space and move in the outdoors and connect with the natural world. I think it's like walking meditation. And I did a lot of walking meditation on the PCT, especially over the last few years. And it helped me sort of sort out some things in my life and come to some conclusions and realizations about what was truly important to me. And, you know, I realized that it's not really stuff, and it's more so that experience of being present, being in the moment. And that is what I've gotten from this trail, probably more than anything. I hope that any of you who are interested in trail work find a way to volunteer or to give to the PCTA so they can continue their great work of protecting and preserving this trail for all of us. And that's all I have to say this morning. I'm going to go on a hike now, and I hope you have the opportunity to do so as well. Happy birthday, PCT!
Regardless of whether you've hiked the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, there's a chance that you've heard of a man named Ed Garvey. He's contributed so much to long trails in North America as a hiker, a writer, a volunteer, and a conservationist. In 1968, he testified before Congress in hopes of getting the National Trail System Act passed. And he's no longer with us, but his daughter Sharon was 13 when that happened. And she's going to share some of her memories and impressions of her father with us today.
Greetings. My name is Sharon Garvey. You may know of my father, Edward B. Garvey. He is probably best remembered for his Appalachian hiker books, which so effectively popularized the Appalachian Trail and promoted hiking in general. But before he thru-hiked the trail and wrote his first book, he had dedicated many years to maintaining and enhancing the trail through his work with both the PATC and the ATC. He also testified before Congress in support of the original National Trail System Act, and subsequently for amendments to the Act that finally provided the funding necessary to protect the AT and all the other designated trails. When he testified before a Senate committee in March 1967, I was 13 years old. I wish I had been there to learn firsthand about the workings of government and the importance of citizen involvement. I wish I could provide some personal details of the event, or even of my father's reflections. I can't, because it was barely mentioned, if at all, in my home. It was just another activity of my dad's, wedged into an unbelievably full schedule. 11 years later, when H.R. 8803 was signed into law by President Jimmy Carter, the welcome news appeared in Dad's diary with just a single sentence and a double underline under the new law's name, PL 95248. Not long after, he was surprised with a framed photograph of the AT plaque on Springer Mountain, signed with thanks by President Carter. Of course, Dad also wrote innumerable articles about hiking-related issues. For years, my awareness of that activity was pretty much limited to my recollection of the staccato key strikes of his manual typewriter as he banged out copy in his den. What my father did share with me and my siblings was his enthusiasm for the great outdoors. I accompanied him on camping trips starting at age 3 and began learning about flora and fauna from him. I never became a long-distance hiker, but I developed an abiding love of nature, and I have devoted countless hours to wildlife observation and photography. At the ATC, there is a memorial stone dedicated to my father. The engraving is very simple, his name followed by 3 words: hiker, volunteer, conservationist. Volunteerism was enormously important to him, and he began volunteering me at an early age. My earliest memories in this regard are of helping him to stuff and seal envelopes when I was a little girl. Later, he would volunteer me to design a new patch and then illustrate his first book. Many years later, when he was recovering from heart surgery and struggling to finish his last book, I took the initiative, perhaps a little reluctantly, in volunteering to help him get it done, and he did. For this 50th anniversary celebration of the National Trails System Act, I salute all those volunteers who have given to us and future generations the extraordinary gift of the great trails that cross our land, providing challenge, exhilaration, discovery, solitude, camaraderie, reflection, and awe for all who wish to walk them. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed watching these trail videos as much as I have, and hopefully you have at least some popcorn or trail mix where you're at to watch these films. And if you've enjoyed them, there's so many online and on YouTube, and I highly recommend. There's a collection put out by the Appalachian Trail Conservancy called My AT Stories, and they profile some really unique and awesome experiences on the Appalachian Trail. And they used, for a lot of them, a really talented videographer named Chris Galloway at Horizon Line Pics, and he does a great job of communicating the spirit of the trail. And one of my favorite projects that I got to help with a little bit captures a group from Chicago, well, a group from all over, but mostly Chicago, coming down to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and doing trail crew on the Rocky Top crew. So now you get to enjoy one of my favorite AT films called Trail Angels.
You've probably heard of the Appalachian Trail. But do you know the keepers of the trail? These are the kids at heart, who never grew out of building forts. They love to play in the woods, and they spend their vacation contributing to the greatest volunteer project in history. This is the Rocky Top Crew, a rotating cast of volunteers who maintain one of the most rugged sections of the Appalachian Trail in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
This is day 3 at Tri-Corner Knob Shelter. Hiked in 5 miles, carrying most of our equipment. Our volunteer crew is composed of one former thru-hiker, individual from Israel, and a crew from Chicago.
This is completely new. I have no experience in backpacking, so.
I'm from the west side of Chicago. I'm a city slicker. Many people don't really get a chance to experience this trail, to even set foot on it. And so for me to come out here and work on it, that's a great chance that I'm able to do. I mean, now I'm actually out in the wild, in the outback. There's bears here and everything, you know?
Every time I stop, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here right now. But at nighttime, it's kind of scary.
The flashlights come on, and everybody's like, who's that, who's that?
I feel like if we didn't step outside our comfort zones, we wouldn't really know what we like and dislike, because we'll be used to the same thing, like continuing. So I mean, stepping outside your comfort zone actually broadens your mind a little bit. Do I actually like this? And don't I like it? But I actually have an opportunity to say whether or not I do, because if you never tried it, you never know.
Volunteerism on the Appalachian Trail is paramount. We really wouldn't have a trail without it. There are 31 volunteer clubs that maintain the Appalachian Trail, and without them, I mean, there would be no trail to hike.
So the goal of the Rocky Top Crew is to make it last longer, to be a footpath that people can continue using because we are trying to stop the erosion.
I've always held that the real trail angels are the people that are volunteering and making the physical trail. This trail is not going to maintain and build itself. We need to do that. There's no one else that can.
Not only do you get to visit a part of the country that is world-renowned, you get to leave your mark. We're building structures here that thousands of people are going to be hiking over for years. And you also get to create some really good relationships with the people on your crew, and learn a lot about yourself and perseverance while you're here. So.
The trailway bloopers.
I mean, this is pretty much my first time in the US. I've read about the Appalachian Trail for years. You know, I've always hiking in different countries, and it's been my dream to, well, one day hike it, and that will be in the future. But you know, even to come here and just be on it. Just seeing the sun go down today after working so hard in the trees for a good couple of hours, and then you hiking back to camp, and it's all quiet and the sun's heading down and the Smoky Mountains are really actually smoky. It's beautiful. Makes it all worth it.
It's been perfectly still the 3 days we've been out here. Pretty much nobody has had cell phone reception. You haven't seen any cars. It's just been a great remote experience up here. Expect to learn a lot and to definitely put in your share of labor, but you'll get so much more out of it than you expect, be it from the relationships you form with people to just that pride you get from maintaining the part of this trail. It's really a special experience.
Thank you, that is nice, yes. So you stay at the theater too? At the corner enough, no?
Yeah, we'll see you there.
Yeah, you see you there? No? Okay. Thank you, very good. Thank you, see you then.
Okay, y'all, in my opinion, we might have saved the best for last. We now have the opportunity to interview a world-class hiker, definitely one of my inspirations. He's done some things that to me are simply unfathomable. So I bring you Justin Trauma-Lickner and also his buddy Jack at the PCTA who's gonna do the interview. So I'll hand it over to you guys.
Hi everybody, it's fun to be live. Thanks for participating in the auction and celebrating the 50th. I'm loving seeing social media, all these photos. So Justin, tell us about your time on the PCT and the AT.
I mean, it's memorable. I don't know how else to describe it. It's amazing what you can do on these trails and what you can do, you know, challenge yourself and see the scenery, you know, and the teamwork that goes into making these trails reality is amazing, from the trail work to the, you know, office work to just everything. It's unbelievable.
So I'm going like this, rubbing my arms, because I think, Justin, you've spent some of the coldest times on the PCT and the AT out of anybody. You've done some
the air conditioning.
You've done some winter recreation on the PCT. Tell us about your winter hikes.
So yeah, I've hiked the AT in the winter and the PCT in the winter, and it's just amazing seeing these places in different seasons. You know, normally people think of the hiking season as being, you know, March through October, or relatively, depending on the trail. But when you head out between October and March, you see a whole different life out there, a whole different scenery, you know, a whole different reality and challenge.
So that just blows my mind. You've done the AT and the PCT during the winter time. What years did you hike those?
I did the AT in the 05-06 winter and the PCT in the 2014-2015 winter.
And was the AT part of your calendar year Triple Crown?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, so cold. So did you, we're really into winter recreation. It's Pacific Crest Trail is just fantastic during the winter time. Not a lot of people out there, unless you're at a ski resort or one of a select number of well-known winter rec sites. Did you see anyone on your PCT winter trip?
On the trail, for about 1,700 miles, we didn't see anybody on the trail. But there's huge opportunity for winter recreation on the trail. There's some really high-use areas, or relatively high-use areas that are close to I-80, I-90.
That's the Tahoe region and up Seattle region, right?
Stuff like that, where you get really easy access to great winter recreation, whether it's Desolation Wilderness near Tahoe, or down into the High Sierra, where you can get up into some of the high country near Bishop or Mammoth pretty easy.
So what are we talking about here? Is it like backcountry skiing, like AT setups, or cross-country skiing? What have you seen people doing on the PCT?
Yeah, it depends on the location. I think you can do it all. Snowshoeing, AT, alpine touring setups, or just straight cross-country. Oregon is a really great place for ski touring or snowshoeing. It's, you're on high plateau a lot near Crater Lake, and not huge amounts of avalanche danger. So.
Okay, and we need to talk about your friend that you did the PCT with. You want to name him?
Yeah, so a guy I've done a lot of trails with, a great friend, Sean Pepper Forey.
Okay, so Pepper and Trauma, when you guys were on the PCT, were using snowshoes and skis and boots and all of it?
Yeah, so we did about 1,200 miles by snowshoe and 550 miles or so by ski, depending on on the conditions and the terrain we were facing. We kind of traded off gear and plan, which we would use based on the elevations and the snow conditions.
And storm systems were just rolling through, and you were out there, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
You're evaluating your route based on the conditions and the systems, and trying to and avalanche danger to kind of stay within the PCT corridor, so that you're off motorized routes, and safe from avalanche danger, but still within that area.
Talk to me about that. I mean, the trail is so often right at the top of the crest, really steep side hills. How did you stay up on the crest, or did you drop down? What did it look like in 2,600 miles of this?
Yeah, so it depends on the situation. Oregon, like I mentioned, a high plateau, really easy, relatively easy to follow the actual trail corridor, but with seeing the saw cuts on the for the limbs on the trees, or the
where the trail maintainers go and clear the trail.
Yeah,
got it.
Or the old axe marks on the trees, the upside down exclamation points that they used to use.
The blazes,
so you could relatively follow it that way. On that high plateau, where it gets a little bit tougher is where the trail does side hill, or the trees are more lodgepole pine, where there aren't lower limbs to
you can pass through on those areas. So,
So the side hilling's tough for avy danger and stuff like that. So depending on the situation, either staying up on the ridge or dropping down a little bit lower and climbing back up.
So kind of any way to get through the PCT corridor, you would do it, right? It didn't have to be on the trail tread.
Yeah. Different than like the AT in the winter, pretty obvious and clear where the path is all the time, because it's a lot thicker growth and underbrush, and and less snowpack. Because on the PCT, we were 10 to 20 feet above the ground surface because of the depth of the snowpack. So you're up at kind of branch level. On the trees a lot of times.
So how are you navigating when you're on the PCT?
A lot of map and compass mainly, occasionally pulling out electronics, GPS, half-mile maps, stuff like that in total whiteouts, but try to rely on non-electronics, because in the winter your batteries could die.
So you must be, are you the only person to ever do the AT and the PCT the whole way during the winter time?
As far as I know.
Okay, got it. Would you like to see more people using the PCT during the winter?
I would love to. I think it's a great opportunity to get out there, and it's perfect for four season use.
That's our invitation to everybody watching. Don't just rest during the winter time. Come out to the PCT. Justin's done it. He's full of good advice, good website. Thanks for celebrating the 50th with us.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate everybody's time and effort in creating these great assets for the world.
Happy birthday, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to say a special thank you to the Girl Scouts, the Heart of Central California, for hosting us here today. And I just want to introduce now Madison Shepard, and she is the Director of Outdoor Adventure, and she's going to tell us what's going on with the Girl Scouts. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. So hi, my name is Madison Shepard. I'm the Director of Outdoor Adventure with Girl Scouts Heart of Central California. And I wanted to share we have a lot of exciting things going on in the outdoor world at Girl Scouts. We recently launched new outdoor badges. It's our Environmental Stewardship Badge Series. And this is the first badge series that has been focused on environmental advocacy. And this is where the girls can really focus on working on issues and finding those environmental things, finding issues and finding solutions and really advocating for these environmental issues. The series consists of 6 badges, and there are 6 badges, and they have one for every age level in the Girl Scouts, so from ages 5 to 18. And some of the criteria that is for them to earn these badges can range anywhere from protecting nature from trash, learning the 7 principles of leave no trace, investigating global ecosystem issues and finding solutions, advocating for those issues, and teaching others how to be good advocates. So we are really excited to be able to introduce these resources for girls to really strengthen their outdoor skills and ignite their interest in being environmental advocates. And we're also excited to be partnering with the Pacific Crest Trail Association to be able to provide these programs for girls to work on these badges. So thank you for having me.
All right, so Little Bear, when did you get the idea to hike the Appalachian Trail?
Well, it was when I was 8 years old. My grandparents took me to Newfound Gap in Smokies, and I saw a sign that said Appalachian Trail, Georgia to Maine, 2,000, however many miles it was then. And at 8 years old, I had the thought in my head, wow, I want to do that. And it was before I knew that anybody did it, or it was, it's a thing, apparently.
How much backpacking experience did you have before you started hiking the AT?
I would go on probably 3 or 4 weekend trips a year. Just, doing probably a 15-mile day would be the biggest day that I would do. Most of them were maybe like 10-mile days, and just out for a few days, few nights.
And how about you?
So I actually learned about the AT in April, like mid-April, and actually it was like kind of late April when I actually learned about like what thru-hiking is and the Appalachian Trail, and I was immediately like, I'm gonna do that. So 3 weeks later, I started the trail.
And how much backpacking experience did you have before you started?
I had like years ago had done like a bunch of backpacking trips. I think the longest one at one time was like probably like a week long, but I had never done backpacking by myself, so that was pretty new and exciting. So.
Okay, so after 1,000 miles, do you feel like you're a real thru-hiker?
I think so. I mean, I think that I'll probably feel even more like a real thru-hiker at the end of it, but I definitely, yeah, I feel like a thru-hiker.
Was there a moment where you thought like, oh, I've got this?
The first day, I think, I was like, I love this, and like I'm finishing for sure. Yeah, I've loved every single moment of it. Every moment, like there have been a couple like moments where I was like, not loving it as much. Usually like bugs, but yeah, I've enjoyed it all.
And how about you? Do you feel like a thru hiker?
Yeah, I was talking to somebody last night that said you're officially a long distance hiker after you've done 1,000 miles. We just crossed 1,000 a couple days ago, so it's like, okay, I'm a long distance hiker. But when I first had the sensation like I can definitely do this, it was the first day as well. I'd never backpacked by myself. I'd always gone with people, and as soon as I got maybe half a mile away from the road, it's like, this is real. I'm doing this. It's just me. So it's very exciting.
Well, thank you very much. And as far as I know, you might be the last snowboat.
Might be. Wouldn't be surprised.
Hi everybody, Ron Creeper here at mile marker 266 on the Pacific Crest Trail on Big Bear Lake, California. Wishing everybody, including these two scenic national trails, the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, a happy 50th anniversary. What a great time, great legacy that this is all about. Standing beside me are two banners that were used 25 years ago when the Golden Spike ceremony was completed near Agua Dulce. That shows that this legacy and this trail is so important. If it's endured another 25 years, it's going to go on for many, many more years for many future generations to enjoy. Trails are important. They allow people to connect to nature. They allow people to get grounded again, kind of reflect, find out what they are doing in this world. Our roots are here in nature, and trails.
And it has been such a blast here at the ATC headquarters. There's so many people who help make this possible, and I know the PCTA, y'all have been working so hard on this too. So I really want to thank the CEOs of both organizations for being excited about this, Suzanne and Liz. I want to thank the staff. I mean, y'all work so hard day in and day out to make sure that we have access to these amazing trails. I need to give a special shout out to the guy on the ATC end who has worked so hard on this, and it's also his last day at the ATC, and we will miss him so dearly. So Javier, thank you for everything you've done, not just for today, but for the past 8 years. Also, we couldn't do this without our sponsors, and they're great sponsors. I got to meet the people from Northwest Federal Credit Union earlier today, and they're just so excited about the trail and getting people out on the trail, and they gave me a hat, which I need for sun protection, and they also said there is a mobile app, so when you're doing your banking from the trail, you can use that. And then Sierra Nevada is just so great and so giving, and there's so much connection between clean water and making craft beer and conservation. And I know my husband and I, two of our favorite beers, I'm an IPA person, so I like the Hot Bullet Double IPA, and he's a fan of the Narwhal, so we recommend you checking those out. I also want to thank all the presenters who gave their time and their stories and their experiences today to make this possible. And Cheryl Strayed, thank you for giving us an hour of your time. That was so awesome. Now, moving forward, I want you to remember our website, atpct50.org, is not going away when this webcast ends. You can still go online, and the auction is still open, and you better get ready, because this is where I'm going to go on and get serious and make some bids. So it's going to be open until midnight AT time, or East Coast, and it's going to be open until 9 p.m. PCT time, or West Coast time. And again, bid on the items. They're fun. They're things a lot of us would like to have, but you can also just make a straight up donation. And I am pledging to give $50, and I know it's not much, and I'm hoping I can give more later this year, but it's something. And the important thing is that everyone just tries to do something. So if you give today, I encourage you to do so, and remember that all the funds are going straight to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and the Pacific Crest Trail Association, and they are going to be split equally between the two organizations. And finally, I just want to, remind you guys here, remind you why we're here. And it's because we have been given a gift, and it takes all of us. It takes the hikers and the volunteers and the staff and the people who make donations and the corporations, and it takes the congressmen and it takes the senators. And we need to remember at a time when our country feels very, very divided that we can get behind good things. And the National Scenic Trails are really good things. So let's work hard together. On the trail they say, a very common phrase is hike your own hike. But today let's hike together, let's volunteer together, let's give together, and let's protect our National Scenic Trails for the next 50 years. Thank you.